So I will shortly say the aim of the meeting and present how we're gonna spend the following 2 hours or so, a little bit less than 2 hours. Then I'll hand to Valentina for the short presentation around the Beijing Plus 25 platform. And we're gonna have 2 breakout sessions, which will last 40 minutes each. We're gonna have 4 breakout rooms first session, and you can see the topics. This is gender-based violence, feminist movement building, economic justice, and sexual and reproductive health and rights. So this round will last for 40 minutes, and after we are back from the breakout rooms, we are not gonna present, but we will make sure that we will capture all the information from you and then we will send out all this information for your review and approval, and to make sure that we did not miss anything, and if anything needs to be added, then it will be added. And then we'll have the second round of the breakout rooms with the Women, Peace and Security as the 2 groups, as there were a lot of people who are interested in this topic. And we'll make sure that this is one of the groups is in English and the second one is in Russian. We'll have the climate justice room and innovation and technology. And then we will have the closing, kind of summarizing of the meeting, and we will make sure that we follow up with all of you. So this important gathering is taking place in the context of the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which is, as you might know, the most comprehensive blueprint for achieving gender equality and women's rights. And it was adopted in 189 countries in 1995. The aim of this consultation is to create the space for women and feminist groups from the Eastern Partnership and Russian region to give your input to the Generation Equality Forum based on sharing best practices on gender equality, identifying barriers to progress on women's rights, challenges linked to the COVID-19 crisis, and generating new ideas on how to mobilize our efforts to collectively achieve system change. It must be noted that we are gathering in a very difficult moment for our region right now, especially for our Armenian and Azerbaijani friends and sisters. I'm sure that all of you are joining in the wholehearted solidarity for everybody affected by this armed conflict that has been happening for already 10 days now. And we invite you to condemn the militaristic politics no matter where, and use this platform to focus on the struggle against hierarchical values, authoritarian institutions, and all the social, economic, and patriarchal atrocities in countries like Azerbaijan and Armenia, where patriarchal values prevail and where there is a social class gap and the wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. So we will have an opportunity to discuss more during this breakout rooms, of course. As I have mentioned, you will all receive the draft of the consultations and recommendations that we will develop together, and you will have an opportunity to provide the written contributions before the preparation of the final policy brief. I want to also mention that we have Aliya El Yassir from UN Women, UN Women, who is the regional director for Europe and Central Asia and representative to Turkey. We have her with us, and we'll give her an opportunity to welcome us shortly. But just before that, and after Aliya, we will give floor to Valentina to share the presentation on generation equality and Beijing Plus 25 platforms. But before that, just for the sake of spending this following 2 hours as fruitfully as possible, I want to shortly go through the solidarity principles that we have come up together. So we just listed, and please feel free to add if there is something missing from this list. We listen to each other, and we think that we are here to hear what we have to say and what we have to share. And this is not just passive listening, but we also engage and we also envision together. Well, we have come up with this acronym, why am I talking, in order to check whether what we are sharing is on topic, to make sure that, because we have really a short amount of time, so to make sure that we know what we are talking about and why we're talking. And also, if we are not talking, to ask ourselves, why am I not talking? Is there anything that is hindering me from engaging meaningfully? It can be technical, it can be language related, like anything that can be a barrier. Please also make sure that you communicate in the chat so that we can support you as much as we can. This is the process for, of course, taking space, but this is not just about taking space, but also making space for everybody. So making space and taking space is one of the solidarity principles here. Well, we are open to someone else speaking their truth. So it means that, well, and also it's connected to the second principle. When you speak, you converse and you don't pitch, because sometimes well, it's important that we attack the ideas and not people. So this is very important. We are here to value the process, so we will have an hour and a half or so together. So it's very important that we spend this time together meaningfully. And of course, we're going to assume that people are having the best intent, because of course, this is not, for most of us, English and Russian is not our first language, and we might share something that might, I don't know, sound not very friendly, but then we should assume that we have had the best intent, and it was not, the intent was not to hurt anybody. And the last one is, may the collective care be our value, because yes, that is something very important for the feminist community, I guess. Now I would like to give floor to Alia for a welcome speech.
Thank you, Salome. And it's not going to be a speech because I am mindful of how precious time is, and it's such a limited resource these days. So I just, want to say, dear partners and colleagues from civil society, I just want to give you a huge thank you from us, whether you are our civil society advisory group, whether you are our partners implementing our programs, or you are just here to support the work that is bringing the voice of women and girls from this region into regional and global fora. We started this journey about a year ago, or just over a year ago, and we were able to meet face to face, and I look forward for us to be able to do that again very soon. But I think we're all committed to this journey that will continue. We will use whichever opportunity arises, whether it is the CSW, whether it is generation equality, and these processes are what we make them. So I just want to say that we're here to listen to you and to learn from you about also how we as UN Women should be supporting you in the work that you're trying to do. I just want to say thank you, in particular to the Women Engaged for a Common Future for helping and partnering with us for facilitating this dialogue and making sure that civil society in this region is well represented in all of the global processes. And I want to thank in particular Valentina, Anna, Salome, and Oksana for the incredible work that you've done so far, and for facilitating and helping us today. And of course, all of you for participating, and indeed, under difficult circumstances that we're seeing across the region. And just to end here with the words of Sasha, which I think inspired many of us at the global event last week to commemorate 25 years since the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And to raise our voices to say we want to build better, we want to build forward, and we don't want to wait 25 years to make that happen. So just to say that myself and all the UN Women colleagues who have helped to make this also a possibility are here to listen to you and learn from you. And thank you very much, and I'll stop there. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Alia, for this warm and inspiring welcome. And now I'll hand to Valentina to start presenting the Generation Equality Forum and Beijing Plus 25 platform.
Yes, thank you, Salome. Thank you, Alia. All the issues that you have touched upon are very important, and today we will have very productive dialogue. I think we should save time. We have presentation in English and I will be speaking Russian, and it has been planned in advance so that we would have a balance also in the language aspect of our meeting. You know that in 1995, 189 governments committed to a Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. This is the most progressive document for advancing women's rights. Beijing platform has accepted 12 critical areas of concern, but even 25 years later, it remains a powerful source of guidance and inspiration for our actions. 25 years, it's an era. And today we are talking about that we need to move from Beijing to the Forum of Gender Equality Forum. We are now talking about new fora, and 2020 is the year where we have seen acceleration in the responsibilities regarding the gender equality. We have important numbers: 25 years of Beijing, also 75 years of UN, 20 years since Resolution 1325 regarding women and safety. Also, SDGs are celebrating anniversary, 10 years since UN Women has been established, and all these are interconnected in terms of gender equality and also promotion of women's rights. Next, please. These are the next steps that we have been talking about. What is very important is, please, next slide. What is very important today is that we are going from a Beijing platform of actions to a wider area. Today we are talking about the Generation Equality Forum, and this is to be stronger than ever. It is aimed at changing the system through partnership, solidarity, and movement building. GEF is a global gathering for gender equality convened by UN Women and co-chaired by France and Mexico. GEF is envisaged as global public conversation for urgent action and accountability for gender equality. It will celebrate the power of activism, feminist solidarity, and youth leadership to achieve transformative change. The outcomes of the forum: a feminist agenda, a setting space, and the setting up of action coalitions. It's an urgent joint action agenda by a group of committed stakeholders. The forum aims to make gender equality not only unstoppable, but culturally irresistible. Next, please. We want to draw your attention to the fact that action coalitions are innovative partnerships among civil society, member states, and business, as well as other stakeholders. You see here parliamentarians, trade unions, mayors, and so on, to achieve accelerated implementation of gender equality commitments. The action coalitions will prioritize scaled up, concrete, transformative and measurable results for gender equality in the period 2020-2025, and suggest a set of immediate actions with timely timelines, and funding. Next, please. Here, we want to draw your attention to the following areas that we want to discuss today during our meeting. First of all, these are gender-based violence issues, the issues of economic justice and rights, the issues of bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights, of course. The issues related to feminist action for climate justice, the technology and innovation for gender equality, and feminist movements and leadership. And also, a special attention should be paid to women, peace and security, and also humanitarian actions. Those are these global areas that today the Gender Equality Forum is focusing on. Thank you, dear colleagues, for your attention.
Thank you, Valentina. I think we'll stop here with the introduction part. And now, Anna, if you can move to the next slide. And we will be breaking out into the groups. And Hannah will help us with that. And once we are in our breakout groups, according to the topics that we have selected during the registration process for the most of us, we will tackle 3 questions during these discussions. The first one is the structural barriers. What are the structural barriers that we're facing while approaching the topic that we have selected during the registration? The second one is legal barriers. And then we will think about the recommendations. Like this will be a very practical working group kind of experience.
A short introduction just to know where are we from, which countries, and it seems to me that we are all concentrated on SRHR issues, but just a short introduction. Can we start from maybe Merita, please?
Thank you, Anna. My name is Melissa. I'm from UN Women as a consultant, communications consultant. So I'm here mostly as an observer and yeah, to make all the demands from feminists public, visible. Thank you and nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for joining. Bistra, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Bistra. I'm a colleague of Hannah from Women Engaged for a Common Future, and I'm dealing with projects on different topics in the Balkan region, Caucasus, and the Central Asian countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Anush, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Anush and I'm from Armenia and I'm presenting an organization which name is Women's Resource Center Armenia. I work in an organization as a coordinator of sexual and reproductive health and rights issues. So I'm really very interested in this topic and nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for joining, Anush. Nino, please go on.
Hello, my name is Nino. I'm from Women's Fund in Georgia, and I work on a project about SRHR, and we work together with SRHR advocates on different issues.
Thank you. Aida?
Hi, everyone. I'm Aida, and I'm also from Armenia, and I work at the Women's Resource Center as a volunteers coordinator. SRHR also is one of my favorite topics. I give huge importance on these topics and the issues generally. So that's why I'm here, and nice to meet you all. Hope to have an interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. As you may already know, I'm Anna from Armenia, and yes, I'm also concerned on the topic of SRHR, and welcome to the board. Though we do not have, unfortunately, representatives from all countries. I mean, we do not have from Belarus, Moldova, Ukraine, and unfortunately from Russia. But anyway, I hope we will have a productive discussion and we will be able to raise the main concerns from our region. I'm going to share my screen because we are going to work on this presentation. I hope it's visible for all of you. So we have this list, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and we need to discuss three main issues, three main topics right now. I'm looking forward to hear your feedbacks, and we will try to type also. The first issue which we are going to discuss are structural barriers which we face in the region, and we know that recent developments in connecting to COVID-19 situation was the major challenge for our region, because among many women's rights which were affected, SRHR issues were probably one of the top issues which were affected due to COVID. Lack of access to contraception, lack of access to abortion services were the issues which I'm sure faced many countries from the region, though now we have only Armenia and Georgia on the board. But I would like to hear from you now, and we can go like on a round. Unfortunately, our UN colleagues, they are just observers here, but if you have any valuable inputs from other countries, I mean in terms of Moldova, Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus, please, Bistra and Marisa, go on. But for now, I would like to pass the floor to you, to Anush, Aida, Nino, to hear your feedbacks, valuable feedbacks regarding structural barriers, and I will try to type very quickly your recommendations. What do you think? What are key structural barriers in our region, in our countries regarding sexual and reproductive health and rights? Yes, just feel free to unmute yourself and go on, because we have already 30 minutes and we need to go through all these topics and have really very strong arguments and recommendations which we are going to pass to action coalitions. And since you know that they have separate topic as an action coalition topic, it's sexual and reproductive health and rights, I think this consultation will be a good starting point also to provide our concerns. Anush, would you like to go on? And if you want, also you may talk in Russian. That's not a problem. That's not an issue. So which language you feel more confident? You may even like use both languages. Yeah.
Well, I will try in English. Of course, my English is not so good, but I will try.
No worries.
In our organization, we have a sexual and reproductive health and rights program, and we are working on several directions on this program, and we face a lot of challenges during this program, and one of them is lack of sexual education, comprehensive sexual education in Armenia. I think this is one of the main concerns regarding to sexual and reproductive health and rights. Actually, we don't have any sexual education at all at public schools, and it's a really big problem. What we have is we have healthy lifestyle lessons, and we know that in future and after 2 years they will put out these lessons also, and they will put some topics during biology courses at schools. And we have a lot of numbers of sexual violence cases, and we have a lot of concerns on sexual health and reproductive health, and this is a very big problem because of lack of sexual education in Armenia. We have a big we have very anti-gender groups in Armenia, and they are doing all work to stop raising this issue. And whenever we start to raise the importance of sexual education, these groups starting to attack on these organizations and saying that we are doing bad
Not
job, we are
appropriate.
destroying families. Yes, and this is a really big problem, and really right now we have a lot of this kind of groups and warning trends in Armenia which affect on the SRHR also.
Can you develop that last point, please?
I think lack of strong contact and movement. Yes.
I'm just writing about your last sentence that you said that we are in work situation, how it may affect the SRHR issues. Can you just develop your thesis a little?
I was talking about warning trends, which we have. Yeah,
sorry.
But of course, yes, war in Armenia also. But I was talking about warning trends. Yeah, no, it's okay. Yes, for example, we have MP representative Naira Zohrabian, and she was talking about some I can't say it in English very properly. Okay, I will tell a little bit later. Sorry.
No worries. And maybe she speaks against abortions, and after
yes, against abortions, and she was talking that even until 12 weeks abortion, we should prohibit it. And fortunately, this law doesn't develop right now, but these are some warning trends in Armenia which could affect on SRHR. Also, we have issues with abortion law. We at 2016 they put 3 days mandatory waiting period. Of course, in Armenia abortion is legal until 12 weeks, but they put this 3 days mandatory waiting period, and this is a really big issue especially for women who are living in rural areas, and of course for different groups of women it is a really big problem to come to the hospital, go back and then come once again. And they also put biased some counseling before the abortion, and doctors doing everything to prevent abortions. It's a really big problem in Armenia. And of course we have a lot of discriminational attitudes towards different groups of women. For example, women who are living with HIV, or women who have disabilities, or from LGBT community. And right now our organization working in a lot of directions, and in this direction also. But the problem is here that doctors some kind of discriminated towards different groups of women on reproductive health issues.
Thank you, Anush. Aida, if you are from the same country, if you just want to add to what Anush has already mentioned.
I think Anush already mentioned all I want to say, and like because she is working in the area of SRHR, so I don't think I have anything to add.
Thank you, Nino. We are shifting to Georgia. Can you briefly also present what's the situation and in Georgia and what are key challenges and obstacles in country?
Yes, I will focus mainly on 3 topics. So first of all, I was thinking about access to contraception because the price of contraception is very high in Georgia. And so previously, the free contraceptions were funded by international donors, but now they have left the country. So people have to buy all the contraception they need, and it's a barrier for them.
I'm sorry, I have missed the point. Access to contraception is high or low in Georgia? Can you just develop that?
It's low because the price is high.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, please go on.
And another point was access to water during menstruation for girls in schools, because in a lot of schools there is no access to clean water and toilets, so girls stay home when they have their period, and it's a violation of their right to education, because they miss lessons because of that, and especially it happens in villages but also in big cities. And my third point was about transgender community, and because it's especially hard for them to find a job because they can't take ID cards that are relevant for them to start a job.
Can you help me to develop that sentence?
Yeah, maybe it's a legal barrier more than
okay, we will keep it.
Yes,
we will keep it for legal barrier. And what else maybe generally we have in the region regarding structural barriers which also influence on SRHR? I mean, do you have this anti-gender rhetorics in the country, strong anti-gender rhetorics? And since I know the role of the church in your country is really very strong, how does that influence on your access?
And the main discourse is also very problematic because, for example, last week there was another initiative in the parliament against abortions, and it's constantly circulating anti-abortion movement and anti-abortion initiatives together with the church.
Does anyone want to add anything regarding structural barriers? And for sure, like I will also add harmful gender stereotypes, which I'm sure the whole region and all countries have. That's regarding the status of women, the role of the women in the society, and I'm sure that this can be also added for all our countries, gender stereotypes.
Yes. And I'm also agree with Nino and want to say that we have also some similarities regarding to contraceptive methods access, because yes, the price of contraceptive methods are also high in Armenia, but also there are some kind of like in rural areas, women should go to other cities to buy some contraceptive methods, and also we know that men often just don't want to use contraceptive methods, especially condoms, and women are often targeted to HIV and other STIs also. I would maybe add an pronatalist, I'm sorry, strategy in Armenia we have, and it's also very affecting to SRHR, especially rights, and all the messages are that you should have children. So the whole messages go to around this topic and not to about choice, about pro-choice movements and etc.
Great. Marita, Bistra, if you want to add some key burning issues from other countries, if you have this information which are really very alarming, please go on. I mean, from other countries, we have feedbacks from Armenia and Georgia, but if you have the information.
Well, maybe because the topic on water and sanitation had been mentioned, maybe I can tell you that in the water and sanitation safety planning compendium, there is a lot of information which can be used by teachers and schools, and we have running programs in the Balkan region on the topic. So maybe some of the schools' schedule can be enlarged, and this topic can start being introduced on the school level. This is the thing which, in terms of the menstrual hygiene problems in the schools, because it's overall, it's also in the Balkan region the same.
I think we can keep it for the recommendations. I mean, to educate teachers and other staff of the schools on menstrual hygiene, and this is really very important topic. So please keep in mind this recommendations, and we will put it for sure in the recommendation section. Thank you. Like we have less than 20 minutes, I will suggest to go to legal barriers. Anush has already mentioned about some discriminative practices from the law on abortion in Armenia. Maybe we can also put it here. I mean, 3 days mandatory wear and advice counseling in the law, in abortion law. Yeah?
Yes, sure.
Abortion law in Armenia.
And during COVID-19, we just realized that this 3 mandatory waiting period is really very hard for women, especially from rural areas, because they in this time they have no chance to transportation, and it's a really very big problem. So for sure we should add to the legal barriers, I think.
Yeah, I will put your point. Please go on, Anush, if you want to add some legal barriers from Armenia in terms of SRHR. In terms of legislation, what is challenging in your country?
Like regarding legal barriers, we on different we have we have a law on sexual education, but we don't have a sexual education. So more or less we have like good law, not say good laws, but we have some laws, but they are not working. So this is also a problem. Because we have a law on sexual education, on contraceptive method access, on non-discriminative approach towards women who are going to abortion services or other services regarding to reproductive health, but in practice they are not working. Also, we have sex selective, in abortion law, we have like this kind of sentence that sex selective abortions are prohibited in Armenia. But we know that this is not the solution, and we know that sex selective abortion is consequences of gender inequality in the country. So just putting these restrictions and without any work, this can affect on women's rights, on SRHR services, and we have this in Armenia, because sex selective abortions are prohibited, but women the numbers are not
they are raising.
They are raising, and women have some women are trying to find some other methods to doing abortions by themselves, some they are using some medications, so this is not the solution. And
Thank you. Do we have any other legal barriers from Armenia, or should we shift to Georgia?
I think we can think while Nino will present their legal barriers. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Nino, if you can, please go on. What's the situation in terms of legal barriers in your country? Do you have 3 days mandatory waiting period in terms of abortion? And what's the situation with contraceptive access legally?
Yes, we have also the 3 days mandatory period, and it's especially difficult for women living in rural areas. Because sometimes the transportation is also a problem. And another barrier, as I've mentioned, was for ID cards of transgender community, because they can take the ID cards with the sex they identify with. It's a barrier for them to get jobs.
I mean, can you develop a little bit more regarding this? Because in Armenia, it's it's not an issue. They can easily get and change their sex and get new ID cards. Can you develop a little bit? What's the challenge? So the government doesn't change their sex,
the government doesn't change, yes, and they ask for additional documents, and it's bureaucracy and so on.
It's not an easy process. The same, I think, in Armenia.
And they ask to document that they have made that transition process and so on. Also, they ask documents about medication and so on, and it's very hard for them to take the ID cards.
Okay. Yeah. Do we have any other burning legal issue in the region? In terms of convention, what's the situation in your countries? I know that both Georgia and Armenia, they have ratified CEDAW convention. We are also sort of for ICPD agenda, but I really don't want to go deeper about this international treaty bodies in terms of legal barriers. Are they accepted, the recommendations which are suggested by CEDAW committee, or this is just another like something which is put on the paper but is not realizing but is not like implemented in your countries? Nino, Anush, Aida, please go on. Maybe I need to develop my question once again. I'm asking about conventions, about international treaty bodies, because we know that the state has specific recommendations from these committees. Yes. What do you see from your countries? Are they just something which is put on the paper? I mean, the state just receives these recommendations, or do you see any progress in your countries in terms of implementation?
Well, I'm not seeing any progress on the topic of SRHR issues because yes, we ratified CEDAW convention, but we are not implementing this in Armenia. For example, regarding to abortion, like we put the 3-day mandatory waiting period, but this is really step back to the to this topic. So yes, more or less we are not in the progress, and also regarding to the sexual education, also we don't have any education system at public schools. So yeah, they are not implementing.
Okay, thank you. And Nina, what's the situation in Georgia?
I think it's partly implemented, but not fully, and there are also problems with lack of implementation.
You know why I am shifting the topic to this issue? Because in terms of recommendations, we need really to understand what's international influence makes. Does it have any sense? Does it have any power on other countries? Yeah, in terms of SRHR. Yeah, that's why I have raised this issue, just to make some concrete recommendations, yeah, for this issue.
Yeah.
If we have any valuable input from our colleagues from UN Women regarding these legal barriers, please. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we are listening.
Okay.
Right
so
now.
Yeah, if we have some, let's make due to the
technical,
internet. Yeah, technical issue. If you still have some input in terms of legal barriers, please go on. Otherwise, we have just 7 minutes to recommendation section. And what I will suggest, just to have 3 key recommendations for our countries, and after just to develop other ones. But what is the most challenging issue right now in your country? And if you just have a chance to solve it right now, immediately, what will be your recommendation? Just maybe 2 or 3 recommendations. Please go on. Nino, maybe we can start from Georgia.
Yes, maybe I'll recommend the government to put the free or cheap contraceptions in health insurance packages.
Mm.
Do you have
especially-
insurance packages?
Yes, state-funded insurance packages.
Yeah.
Yeah, put, oops.
For all citizens, yes, you have.
Yeah, for all citizens, or at least for them who don't have private health
Yeah.
insurance or who can't access.
Yeah, good.
In state insurance package. Can you just check what I'm typing, guys, just to make sure that everything is correct?
Yeah.
I put
Yes,
this.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe
please.
state-funded health insurance packages.
Yeah, state funding for contraceptive measures. Georgia in insurance, state insurance. Just I will write this and will formulate later, because just to make sure that everyone understand that we are for putting it in the state insurance package. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please go on, Nina. What's the other?
And also increase access of water in schools.
And maybe Bistra, can you just formulate your recommendation? I know you were also suggesting something specifically in terms of menstrual hygiene.
I was suggesting that the water and sanitation safety plans, which are based on WHO recommendations and developed by WECF, can be used as a studying package and can have some projects on well, yeah, it is recommendations put in place as
maybe
let me read it, sorry. Increase access of water at school, menstrual hygiene. Maybe you can write after the menstrual hygiene, you can write the WSSP, water and sanitation safety planning.
Water, WS.
S, once again S, and then P, compendium and compendium.
Can you write it in the chat, please?
Yeah, you can leave it like this. You can leave it like this. Everybody knows now, or most of the people know what exactly is it.
Okay.
And also some trainings of trainers for teachers and to be included into the program of the schools in rural areas, especially where the water is a problem issue among the schools. Yeah, and of course you can find the link of this recommendation of this WSSP at our webpage, and if you have further questions, I can answer you.
Okay,
you
great.
can ask me. Yeah.
Thank you, Bistra. And Anush, please go on. We have just 3 minutes to.
Yes, I will say that put out the 3, like any mandatory periods for abortion laws and biased counseling. Also, put the sexual, like comprehensive sexual education in Armenia, and maybe training for like school teachers for how to speak with children about sexuality and sexual rights issues. And also work maybe with medical staff to like raise their sensitivity towards different groups of women who are coming for some reproductive health issues.
And do you have any specific recommendation in terms of COVID-19, since we are now in the second wave? I mean, many of the countries, maybe not specifically Georgia, but Armenia definitely is having its second wave alongside with the war. So we are fighting in two levels, first on the front line with war and the second with COVID, because the numbers are rising rapidly in the country. So what would be your recommendation specifically in terms of COVID situation?
Maybe just raise some strategy plan for SRHR also, because in Armenia we don't have specifically some strategic planning on SRHR issues during COVID-19. We have only some strategy for prenatal care, but not for all reproductive health issues. So maybe just like to know that this SRHR put on the SRHR on the agenda.
Nino, do you have any prioritize?
Yes, maybe I will.
Guys, we have just.
We
Nino,
don't have time. Yeah,
we have just 50 seconds. Nino, if you can just formulate it very quickly. You are unmuted, Nino.
I mean, increasing SRHR access in the quarantine zones.
Access in quarantine. What do you mean in during COVID? You mean?
Yes.
Great. So yeah.
Thank you, Anna, very much.
Thank you,
for
dears.
great moderation.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you, dears, for your valuable input. See you in the main room. Thank you for this discussion. See you.
For us to collect today. As we have already mentioned in the invitation, you will be able to see the draft of the document that we prepare, and also to make additional comments if something that you mentioned was missing or that you didn't mention during the conversation. And to not delay anymore, I would like to dedicate, maybe try to break our time a little bit in 3 sections and start with structural barriers, and invite any one of you to take the floor and mention some of the key structural barriers that you are seeing to development and building of the feminist movement and women's leadership in the region. And if I understand correctly, Sana will be helping us with typing them up. If that's my understanding, Sana, could you please confirm?
Yes, as long as they're in English, because I don't speak Russian.
Yes,
so, Oksana, if there's any Russian contributions, if you could do those, then that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure I have access to typing up and to being able to write on this. That's why I am relying on you to check.
Everyone has access to this presentation. I will share the link once again in the chat.
Right. Okay.
So everyone can see it.
So one way is for you to make your contributions is you can start speaking, or you can write down your contributions, and we will be able to read them when we discuss them. So is anyone ready or feels willing to take the floor right now, please?
If I may, I can share my own experience based on what we do in Georgia. Well, we work with the women and the youth, actually, and we facilitate professional and career development of women and youth. Therefore, when we talk about creating feminist movement, I think one of the first barriers that comes is that we are patriarchal society. So it's the forum of how the society is organized in Georgia, and how the gender roles are assigned, because today we are talking about if we are talking about women's professional development or career development in terms and access to education for women, then we need to understand how these gender roles are organized in the families, in the communities. So this would be these two things would be one of the biggest barriers, I guess, because when you form a kind of a group of social movement, and if you want to engage women who are age of above 25 or so, then you see that the time that they need to dedicate to this movement is scarce, and because they don't have time because of the things that they have to do at home. So the responsibility they are upholding to themselves, the family, motherhood, parenthood, motherhood. I'm kind of dividing these two things. Like one of them is that being a mother, like the whole dedication of your life to your children, and the parenthood is like when mother and father still there is a problem of sharing responsibility as a parent. Therefore, in the structural barriers, I think these two is the most crucial, and I think also lack of education in terms of awareness, why they should be. I like this idea, why they're not talking and why people are not talking, or why they don't allow themselves to talk because of the lack of education, the quality education. This could be also one of the barriers.
Thank you very much.
In Georgia we have early marriages.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just clarify if you were talking about education in general, like primary education, or you were talking about more awareness about gender equality. And I'm hearing now that you are talking about actually access to primary and secondary education for women and girls, right?
I think access to education in terms of, I would higher education and using the education for the employment. I think these two things, because women in Georgia, statistically more women are receiving education, primary education and secondary education than boys. That we have these statistics. So I think it's higher education and how they are, if they are able to use that education. And because we still have the stereotypes that women's last mission is to have a family. So we still have that kind of stereotype. And
Thank you very much. I see already two more comments in the chat. Natalia Karbowska would like to speak, and then Emma Matrenyuk. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your names correctly. You also have an option of raising your hand virtually if you know how to do this, but writing this in the chat works well. And I'm welcoming Natalia, and I'm really grateful for you to be concise with the time. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Oksana. I was thinking more in terms of structural barriers within the movement, and there are a few things that I would like to, to suggest for us to include. First of all, is that, in my opinion, the movement in Ukraine and also in the other countries of the region is still kind of quite fragmented. We have different sub-movements within the movement, and they really lack platforms for cooperation, discussion, and joint planning. Another structural barrier that I see is the movement is not populated well. In many of our countries, the movements are basically women's rights organizations or feminist organizations plus some activists, but in order for us to be effective and influential, we have to be bigger as the movement. So this is the second challenge, lack of funding, of course. is a big barrier for the movement development and strengthening. And another thing that I wanted to raise is their influence of COVID-19 and pandemic and lockdown on the movement, on individual organizations and movement as well, because we see that we are becoming providers of humanitarian, we have to answer to humanitarian challenges and needs, and this changes our focus, unfortunately. So from being political, we are becoming providers of aid in many cases.
And you are seeing this as a barrier because from what I'm guessing and I'm hearing, that it moves the feminist movement away from advocacy and change and towards immediate response, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Natalia. And please, if you have something else to add and that you are thinking about, please write it in the chat, because I will try to give floor to those who haven't spoken yet. Please, Emma was willing to go next.
Yes, good morning again. My name is Emma Matrinyuk. I'm from Moldova, and I represent the Organization of Young People with Disabilities, Vivere. And in terms of structural barriers, let me mention the infrastructural barrier, if it is relevant to this portion of movement, building the movement, feminist movement. And of course, if we open the brackets, we will see that women with disabilities who are sometimes double discriminated do not have the accessibility, infrastructural accessibility to different buildings, organizations, let's say places that they need to go, where they need to promote their rights. So this, I think this is a very, very crucial point. Thank you.
Thank you. We are talking about infrastructure here as a point of access from what I'm hearing, and entering also the issue of intersectionality of needs and rights of different groups of women. Thank you for bringing this up. And if there are other points on this item that are related to the intersections of specific inequalities that you would like to bring up, you're also welcome. I have in the chat one more comment about structural barriers, which is organized anti-feminist campaigns, including by representatives of the national governments. And from my experience, I would agree that this is a common challenge for many countries in the region. And perhaps also lack of understanding or research about these movements or these issues, which is emerging only right now. And some of the research is coming. Is there any other comment or contribution around structural barriers that you would like to voice or write in the chat or mention in some other way, please?
Can I add?
I'm not seeing who this is, but yes,
Christina
please. Christina, yes, welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I would like to add that saying that there is no any statistics, and the gathering of gender disaggregated statistic on the issue is key to also fight the barriers that we are facing as women or gender promoters in our context. So I think that in order to have the facts and figures behind our statements that we're doing, we need to have figures, facts, and we need to push our government to push our statistical services, our other bodies to collect this information, not only to rely on the data that is collected by us, by women organizations, but also we need to have some state structures to ensure that on a regular basis we are collecting the information on gender equality critical areas in the country. Another important thing that I would like to stress that we need to expand our partnership. We are currently working maybe directly with the government, or we are forming our movement, but we need to bring also political parties to this discussion, because whenever we are talking about leadership, whenever we are talking about political participation. There is a gate. That gate very strongly and put by the political parties. And sometimes in our society, in our region, political parties act as a closed environment, and we don't have access to internal things, what is happening, how the selection of the leaders in the political parties or the selection of the candidates are taking place. So I think that we need to be more open to work with them, influence them, and try to push gender equality agenda also for their agenda, as their agenda. This is at this point I would like to add just.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Those are quite important points. Perhaps there are others who haven't spoken yet, who would like to take the floor, speaking of structural barriers. If not, we can move to the legal barriers, which are sometimes interconnected and similar, but can also be a bit different. So I'm asking once again, contributions on, Adriana is writing, low public awareness of what feminism and feminist movements are outside barriers. And also the government develops policies in the form of process for the sake of the process, not for the sake of the result. Those are inside, and inside structural barriers, weak institutional and lack of long-term strategies for fundraising and communication. Thank you, Adriana. I see that there is support for these points. Feminist organizations are often left out of agenda setting and decision-making in political spaces. Right, thank you. Let's try to focus on legal barriers and talk about specific legislation that is lacking in our countries, or specific policies that we still need, or the specific policies that exist that are a barrier to us and to our work and to the promotion of women's rights in general in our contexts. And again, here I welcome you to take the floor, especially those who haven't spoken yet, but also those who have specific contributions. You can be very specific to your own cultural or country context as well, because of course you may be connected to an advocacy point in your region, in your country, much more than the whole region, and that is also fine. I can say that from the Ukrainian perspective, one of the pieces of legislation that our movement has been advocating is the Istanbul Convention. And maybe this is resonating with other countries in the region as well. We see this document as significantly advancing women's protection and prevention of gender-based and domestic violence. I welcome you to comment specific issues around any concrete topics around sexual reproductive health or women, peace and security, which we will be discussing as well. But possibly you want to mention them here as well. There is a comment from Anke around COVID-19 related legal barriers. You also have them in Germany now at this stage. And are you speaking, Anke, about overall restrictions and the quarantine norms, or is there some specific legislation that has emerged as a result that pertains to women's rights?
No, not, yeah, sorry, I didn't really want to speak about Germany. I just wanted to say in Germany, at least we do have the right of assembly infringed and things like that. So, but that's really not nothing specific.
A comment from Natalia Karbovska is that national agenda machinery in Ukraine is weak, which is a barrier for the movement, in her opinion. And by national machinery, Natalia, from what I understand, you mean the government system for ensuring gender equality, government focal points for gender equality, and the support for the government commissioner. Thank you. Any other comments from other countries in the region about specific legislative barriers? There may be something that relates to the work of civil society overall in your context, about registration of organizations or the ability to receive funds from foreign forces, which clearly also prevents the feminist and women's movement from working and developing. Anyone would like to comment on that, maybe? Informational barrier from Emma, a comment. Emma, could you speak a little bit more about this, please? And lack of knowledge. As legislative barriers, or?
Yes, can I?
Please.
Excuse me? Yeah, this is Emma talking again. Yes, if I might put here or mention the category of women from the rural areas, again, if you talk about women with disabilities, so we can also talk here both about women with disabilities and women from the rural areas who actually do not have either access to information or they just simply don't know that such information exists. So how can we somehow structure this into, put it into words, so to understand how can we improve this issue or help this category of women?
Specifically rural women you mentioned and women with disabilities, right?
Yes, both categories from rural areas, because if you talk about municipalities or bigger cities, so somehow we know that this is circumstantial and it's a global. Women with disabilities in cities, they are much more privileged, let's say, if we can put it so. But in the rural areas, they don't have access to information, they don't know, and everything comes much slower to this to these areas somehow.
So I hear this both as a structural barrier, which you already mentioned, and possibly a legal barrier, because I'm assuming that national policies and resources that are focused on women and women's rights are not directed and are not inclusive of needs.
Absolutely, absolutely. TV is the only source, but it's not always the highest point of informational, relevance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would also add here that again, at least what we're trying to advocate in Ukraine, and from what I hear from colleagues in other countries, that there is a lack of intersectional approach in terms of making policies and developing. So the process of policy development in itself and legislation development is often not considering or including the needs of different groups of women, such as women with disabilities or LGBTQI women or rural women and others. And the mechanism for consultation process with civil society is quite weak.
Oksana, may I add something?
Please.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't think we have participants from Belarus in our group, so I wanted to talk about our experience there. We do provide grants, we did provide grants to women's rights organizations from Belarus, but not anymore, unfortunately, because of the fact that each organization has to register every grant with the national or local authorities, which makes it impossible for organizations to get funding from abroad. Yeah, so I think unfortunately this didn't change yet. Hopefully it will change.
And this understanding comes from your experience with work with colleagues in Belarus, as I understand. And from as far as I know, again, we don't have colleagues from Russia in this group, as far as I understand. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Then this is a similar issue as well for Russian, for civil society in Russia. Olga is with us, but I think she left the chat. She registered here and introduced herself. Adriana wants to speak. Yes, please, Adriana.
I just want to add that also legal barriers is that we, for example, in Ukraine, we don't have quality gender analysis of legislation because our Minister of Justice say that every law is like neutral, gender neutral. That's why we don't have gender budgeting, and we don't focus. Our government don't focus on gender sensitive aspects of needs. For example, in Ukraine now, our organization advocates for women's health in the defense sector, and we understood the Ministry, for example, of Defense, they even don't know about the problems of women's health and men's health in the army. So they say that we don't have money, we don't have gender budgeting, and Ministry of Justice say that the law is neutral, so it's okay.
Thank you so much.
Can I add to that point?
Please go ahead.
The problem of gender-neutral laws is a key also in Armenia. And as a conclusion, we discussed with our partners and decided that the law on mandatory gender impact analysis after any legislation that is going to pass as a draft, it is going to be brought to the consultation, needs to be done. So at the moment, as a solution, we are advocating to have a law on mandatory gender impact analysis of the legislation. In this case, if the government will succeed and the government will pass this law, it means that any piece of the legislation needs to pass this analysis, needs to pass this so-called audit, and if it have a negative impact on the gender equality situation in the country, it should be approved or amended. So as a part of the solution, I'm coming to the recommendation, but this is also, we are in the draft stage and we don't know whether we will succeed on pushing this or not, but I think that this can be a good solution in order to also overcome this gender blindness of the legislations that we are facing all the time in different sectors.
So how would you phrase the recommendation in a more specific or concrete way? Because I already heard that you mentioned moving towards recommendations.
Yeah, actually, our recommendation as an organization is not only to work to make a gender-sensitive any piece of the legislation that is coming, for example, electoral code, labor code, but to have a law on mandatory gender impact analysis, which will require that any piece of legislation need to pass gender audit and gender impact need to show that how it is influenced on gender equality situation in the country. If this mandatory condition is in place, it means that the same is going with the environmental issue. If the law is can bring the environmental hazard, so government has no right to pass this law. So similar approach we're proposing to have this mandatory gender impact analysis law as a regulation, as a requirement to any legislation that is coming for the adoption, any to parliament or to government.
Thank you. Thank you. I think this is well noted, that gender analysis and gender audit of legislation is a mandatory, like a checkpoint for adopting or not the legislation. I would like to invite us, we have a bit less than 10 minutes left, to start voicing concrete recommendations around some of the other points that we mentioned or anything else that comes to mind. I saw some also comments in the chat that the law does not define or recognize single mothers. Leah, can you please mention, maybe this is relevant for your country, right? This is for Georgia. And you also mentioned property rights, cases when rural women left out of government support in case they are forced to leave the house or are victims. Okay, I'm reading all of these, and we will note them, include them in the notes. And in terms of saving the time, yes, thank you, Leah. I would like us to propose to see if there are some of the recommendations, they naturally emerge from the challenges that we describe. Yes, and but perhaps based on what we discussed, you have some very concrete recommendations or advocacy points that you are already working on, or that you would like to start working on, or think that it's important to mention right now. Some of the structural barriers that we have mentioned are patriarchal society, different access to quality education, structural barriers within feminist movement, lack of funding, influence of COVID. What could be some of the recommendations emerging from those challenges that you would like to mention right now? It can be recommendations to governments or to international organizations or to different stakeholders that, in your opinion, can influence the situation. Okay, I'm not seeing much else in the chat right now. Natalia is writing, advocate for more and better resources for the movement, support grassroots organizations, and capacity building for the movement.
Can I also add a recommendation?
Please go ahead.
At the moment in the country, we are in the process of adopting a new electoral code and political party law. So actually we are, as an organization, as a movement, leading the movement in Armenia, we are trying to push the increased gender quota in Armenia. So as a recommendation, as a support to, and I know that this is also an issue in other regional countries. So as a support, I would like to see more some kind of regional movements towards equal political participation, 50-50. So this will some kind of linking this with the SDG 5, and I think that this, if there will be some kind of regional campaign led by UN, I think that that will support also to push our advocacy messages and to push our advocacy work that currently we are actively engaged in the country level.
Thank you. So regional advocacy for women's political participation and increase of opportunities for women. Sana is asking a question in terms of what is most important in terms of capacity building. It's a question to Natalia, who mentioned this recommendation. And I understand, Sana, you are talking about specific topics or skills or themes.
Yeah, I can answer briefly. Thank you for the question. I think it is important, well, individual organizations capacity building, and also capacity building of the whole movement, like different convenings, different places for organizations or for the members of the movement to talk about the movement itself, what they mean by women's rights or feminism, what are the values, the main principles that unite organizations in the movement, and then also advocacy, of course, building our capacity as the movement to be more political and more vocal. And also, I added one more point about the Action Coalition number 6, which is about feminist movement. Unfortunately, I don't know much yet about how the coalition will work, but maybe we could think more in terms of how we can all engage in work of this coalition and how to make it for our countries and for the region.
I think one of the purposes of this consultation is, in fact, to feed into the working groups, and this is how we are also divided by topics of our consultation. They are related to the topics of the action coalitions, in fact. So these recommendations and comments and notes will reach the coalition, but as far as I understand, also from your words, Natalia, the recommendation could be to provide more information about the work of the Action Coalition and to establish its cooperation with civil society on a more regular basis, right? Because we know it exists, we are not aware yet of how we can engage in regular advocacy with this group, with this working group on a regular basis. I'm also seeing comments about creating independent spaces in each municipalities and local level, providing quality education system. These are comments from Leah. Adriana is writing media quota for feminist advocacy organizations for public awareness. In Ukraine, most people watch TV. Oligarchic channels do not show social advertising or show anti-political slogans. Media is very important for us today. So increasing women's access to media by possibly introducing quotas or finding other means for women's movements to gain more visibility. Law must be exercisable, if this is the right word. I mean flexible. You may have the law, but exercising the law may take years. So ensuring proper implementation of existing legislation for effective operations. Natalia is saying that she has to leave now. Thank you very much for your input as well. And as I said, again, we will share the text and you will be able to add more points if you think of something after the consultation. Providing funding opportunities to local groups is another recommendation that is emerging. And we actually have less than a minute left in this group. So to raise awareness of the public about work and success stories of women involved in various fields, politics, economy, etc. So it's giving more visibility to women in the movement. Media literacy, monitoring. Emma, could you please write a little bit more about or say what monitoring of what and by whom? What you mean by this? We have 20 seconds. You can also write it in the chat in a bit more detail so that we can include it.
I think that we have a really small group, which is an asset in a way. So that means that we'll have an opportunity to go into a deeper conversation. I will quickly remind that these breakout sessions are also recorded. So if you have anything to object, this is the time to do it. Otherwise, we will continue to record. And we have Azar is here.
Yes,
so,
I'm here.
Hi, Azar. So everybody who needs translation, we have this option as well. And I will maybe do a very short introduction to the topic. I'm sure that all of you are very well familiar, but still. So all of you know that the climate change can have very different social, economic, and public health and other impacts on underprivileged populations. And I would say advocates for climate change.
Excuse me, Salome. Am I supposed to interpret simultaneously? Because I'm not assigned as an interpreter. I'm not sure whether it is possible to be assigned as an interpreter in the breakout room. And if not, then I will do it consecutively, if it's needed, of course.
I don't think it's needed. Is there anybody who needs Russian translation?
Кому-нибудь нужен перевод на русский язык в этой группе?
No, I think.
All right.
I see that Sergey also joined. Can you hear me better? Anke is saying that my voice.
Сергей, вам нужен перевод на русский язык?
Да, добрый день. Нужен, если можно.
Yeah, Sergey says he needs interpretation. So, am I going to be assigned as an interpreter and do it simultaneously? Is it possible technically, or am I going to do it consecutively?
I don't think it's possible in a breakout room.
So maybe it's better to do it consecutively.
All right. Or maybe we can go with these participants to the main room and continue it simultaneously there to save time, because it will be like twice as long if we do it consecutively.
Do you think we can do that, Sana? Can we go to the main room?
It's empty.
Yeah,
it was empty.
Yeah, we can move to the main room.
Yeah, if it's empty, then we can do that.
Yeah, I will kick everyone in this room to the main room.
Thanks.
If I can.
Мы сейчас все вернемся в основную комнату, и там будет перевод синхронный, потому что здесь синхронно технически не получается, оказывается.
I seem to not be able to kick people out, so you have to actively move there, all of you.
Okay, so just push the leave room button, which is in the lower right corner.
В правом нижнем углу, пожалуйста, нажмите на «Выйти из комнаты».
Okay, see you.
Great.
Hi, welcome back. I think it's all 9 of us.
Yeah.
Oh, Hannah is missing.
Azer, are you in the right group now for translation?
Yes, I'm interpreting into Russian as long as something is said in English.
Perfect. Great. Okay, then I think we can continue.
We'll have to choose the room again. So if you're speaking English, choose the English channel. And if you're speaking Russian, use the Russian channel. Okay, and then we can start with, I think we have 2 more people who needs to introduce themselves. This is Pancho and Sergey. So please feel free to very quickly say your name, country, and the organization, and we can just jump into the discussion.
It might be a little confusing if they're speaking in Russian and Azer is in the Russian room.
No, once they start speaking Russian, I will switch to English.
Great.
Добрый день, ко мне было обращение, да?
I think I should introduce myself, right? I was trying to switch the languages. My name is Sergey. I'm from Belarus. And what was the other question? The organization I'm working for, OBF. It's the National Educational Organization. It is also working. It's also in Sweden. Working in Sweden, we collaborate with them, and we work on different areas of education.
Thank you, Sergey. And Pancho, if you want to say just hello and the country you're coming from. Okay, so I hope that Pancho will join us at some point. And now I will start sharing the screen. All of you already have the link to the presentation, but I'll just quickly put it in the chat so that you can follow. I will be taking notes and I'll record everything that you're saying, but please feel free to edit, comment, and change. The questions are the same. We'll still be talking about the structural barriers, legal barriers, and we'll be developing recommendations around the climate justice. So you can go to slide 21, which is the climate justice sticky notes slide. So we can start there, and I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Okay. And I encourage all of you to contribute. This is a very small group, which means that we can really go into the deeper conversations. We have very little time left, and let's just kick off and start our brainstorming around the structural barriers. And this can be the level of country, region, or very local. It doesn't matter, just go for it. Share everything that you have to share. So who wants to start? What are the structural barriers that we are facing when it comes to climate justice? Okay, maybe I'll ask Gohar because she's working specifically on this issue and I'm sure that she has a lot to share. So Gohar, if you can start and share the structural barriers that we face when it comes to climate justice.
Okay, thank you. We can look at the different levels. If you look at the international levels, we have good instruments in place. We have the climate agreements. We have a number of chemicals conventions. We have interesting processes going, like the strategic approach to international chemicals management. We have the water and health protocols. So all these international instruments have direct link to the climate issue. And of course, the biodiversity, all these international instruments are in place. And I'm sure that many, if not most of our countries are parties to these international conventions and participants to processes. For Armenia, we're parties to all these important instruments. And we have good involvement of the NGO sector. For instance, my NGO is the national focal point for Stockholm Convention, the SICAM strategic approach for international chemicals management. We're quite involved in biodiversity, but not so much. We're not very much a climate organization, more into chemicals. I think in Armenia we have good engagement, but if we come to the barriers start at the enforcement side. You may have good legislation, and our legislation is not bad. Now, unfortunately, we do not have law on chemicals, but it's being under development. And there is one big barrier which is linked to Armenia, for instance, joining the Eurasia Union, and many other countries are members of Eurasia Economic Union, where there are certain, there is a legal framework which may be less stringent than the one in EU. For instance, when it comes to chemicals, we have noticed that, and we're doing big advocacy and works throughout the region. And I think that I'm sorry, Olga Ponyezova is not here from ECO Accord, but she is the one that is leading this process, the organization. So this is the barrier. The main barrier is to keep the positive things that we have in country, that we have adopted quite stringent to be in line with the EU directives, and now there is a step back in certain directions when we're joining the Eurasia Union. But it's a thing that can be, well, we have to work on that. It's not that they're opposing, but there is a lot of work to be done there. I will stop here, see if we are in the right direction, and I would like to hear other colleagues. Thank you.
And Gohar, if that's okay, I also want to ask you about the specific groups and the influence of the climate justice and climate change. Because when we're talking about the climate justice, one of the core parts of it entails that this climate change affects the most vulnerable first. And usually this is the women, and of course other vulnerable groups as well. So what would you say in that regards, like if we take Armenian context, what are the structural barriers for women specifically, if I may ask?
Yeah, there is the issue of vulnerable populations that are affected if they live in or around contaminated spots, around the mining areas, where the communities are affected. When we are speaking about economic rights and economic justice, this is directly interlinked, right? The climate movement is linked to that side as well. And we have a rather strong NGO movement here, and women are quite pronounced if we speak about the movement. But Of course, when you go to the community, the ones who are most affected, of course, are the women, especially the women from vulnerable families, the women who are left alone to take care of their families because of the out-migration, because these are the poor communities, mostly hit by poverty. So there is a burden of the climate justice. There is a very difficult choice that they are making. From the one hand is to protect their environment, and from the other hand to have the right to work, right? If we are closing, for instance, a mine that is dangerous, that is open mining, that is damaging our environment, but on the other side, there is no alternative. People are left without jobs, so what to do? And the economy is also suffering. So there are many balances that have to be looked into. Yeah, that's the main issue there. And unfortunately here, the voices of the most vulnerable, the women in the directly hit communities, are not heard. They don't, even if they do want to speak, they are not trained. They don't know their rights. They don't know how to get into this movement. And at the same time, not to endanger themselves, because they are dealing with the strong lobby of the industry that is polluting. From the other side, we have the industry also. So we're pushing for polluter pays principle there. So there are many issues, and unfortunately, women do not have all the tools there. And the girl child is also especially affected here.
And you have mentioned the principle I couldn't catch, sorry.
Polluter pays. The one who is polluting the environment, the economic enterprise, for instance, that is polluting the water, the drinking water source. They have to pay for that damage, they have to restore it, and that has to be put into the legal frame. Legally binding principles, and this is lacking. The recommendation is to have legally binding principle of polluter pays. And that can be helping the most vulnerable populations, restoring the damage done to them, etc.
I'm not sure if I'm capturing this polluter pays thing correctly, but please have a look and correct if that's wrong in the recommendation.
It is polluter, the one who is polluting, ER ending, polluter.
Okay.
And it's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gohar. Anyone else wants to share? Olga?
Thank you, Salome. Maybe I would add a couple of points. First of all, I would like to stress also importance of women group participation in decision-making related to climate policy and especially adaptation policy, especially women groups who represent vulnerable groups of population. And so far, many women groups don't properly realize link of their activity with climate change issues. For example, it relates to women working, for example, on agricultural problems and some other problems, health problems. And so another idea would be to raise the awareness of women group on their role in climate policy and to show them relations of their activity or relations to climate change to their activity. In my country and in region we work on, I just see this lack of understanding of climate change issues and underestimation of relations of influence of these climate change issues to activity of women group. Despite now climate change issues now on the air, a lot of information about it in mass media, but nevertheless, I feel like women groups underestimate this problem. This is in short.
Yeah, if you can allow, I would like also to bring the attention to the mitigation issues for the climate change and the alternatives. And I very much agree, support Olga's point about raising awareness and giving the information about existing alternative. If we are saying that do not use the, for instance, fossil fuel, what to do? So there is the, for example, alternative energy that has to be promoted from the highest level in the government, including the policies to promote solar, wind energy, I don't know, thermal energy, etc. So giving the alternatives and raising awareness of the population and pushing for a consumer demand for alternatives that are not damaging the climate, contributing to lesser CO2, the green gas emissions. Thank you.
And how do you think it should be regulated on the legal level, and if is it regulated or not at all? Like these alternatives, how should we make sure that, for example, companies or also
in Armenia, for instance, the national government has stated that renewable energy is one of the strategic components of national economic development. So that's one. But one thing is to state, another one is to provide instruments for the communities to stimulate them to move to these types of things. For instance, I know that they are promoting the exchange of electric grid between the energy that is produced using solar panels. It is given to the energy grid, and they're covering this, compensating the energy that is spent using other fuel, the fossil fuels, gas. So there are instruments that are in place, but the thing is to, again, the enforcement and the national commitment is important, of course, but these are, well, it needs also investment. Investment climate has to be changed. The big investors have to be also aware, and there is big awareness raising work and advocacy work with those who have the big money, who are investing in things.
Thank you, Bahar. Svetlana, would you like to share? Or Sergey, maybe?
So if you allow, I can add among the policies, the recommendations that can be working well. And another priority in my country is the agricultural development. And agriculture is very much, in many countries in our region, is very much pesticide intensive. And here the recommendation would be to raise awareness about alternatives to pesticides, about the integrated pest management and other techniques that exist, biohumus mating and all those things, pharma education, and giving, and these are simple tools. They do not, and that's very important, they do not need much money. You are just learning how to use biohumus, and with this small investment, you are making a good, organic agriculture is also a very good option to promote. As an alternative, with the understanding, of course, that we cannot deal away with the pesticides altogether. GMO is a big issue, and maybe if we have participants from big agricultural countries, they can be contributing to this discussion as well.
What about GMOs? Like, what would be the recommendations around the GMOs?
This has to be regulated somehow. Because it has lots of, it is directly hitting the health of the population, the vulnerable populations, and it's endangering the future. We don't know what we're getting into. And a scientific base has to be developed. Scientific, in whatever things are being recommended for climate justice, there should be good scientific base.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kohar. And I would also like to ask about, well, one thing is the actual pesticides, GMOs, and well, very tangible things that we see during the climate change. But then another one is the migration, and I think it was Kohar who mentioned the internal migration as well. And because of the climate change, we actually had such kind of cases in Georgia as well, when the communities had to change places and, for example, move from the mountainous region to the very deserted place to live because there was the snowfall and it was impossible to live there. And this also had a very gendered aspect in this case because it was connected to the property, who owns the property, and how the government compensates this. Who are the ones who are getting compensation? Are those men, so-called heads of the families in our regions, or are those also women? Because in our case, there were women who were stuck in those deserted places because they could not afford to move, even though their husbands had very strong ties and connections with the place where they have migrated. So I was just wondering if there is anything that resonates that I was sharing right now. Is there such kind of cases in your countries as well? And what would be your recommendations to address this as well? And I would encourage all the newcomers as well. I see that Olga and Zumrut joined. And Sergey and Svetlana, you're also very welcome to share.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Sorry for joining late. It's very, very early in the UK and I'm based here. So, but I'm coming from Azerbaijan, and I wasn't sure it was only about Armenia because Gohar was speaking, and I thought we're discussing one country in the group, but it seems like it's not, right? So I can, right. So, well, I would probably, I can't read everything at the moment because you wrote quite a bit now. I would add probably from oil perspective, because yeah, Azerbaijan, of course, there are lots of oil companies who are working in the country. So, and there are talks about reducing carbon and everything. So that's something that, of course, we should also support. BP, for example, is actively working and promoting more eco-friendly kind of ways, and it does obviously, of course, fund them as well in addition. But like, for example, SOCAR, which is a which is a state-owned oil company, is not at the moment sharing discourse that, or willingness to reduce the damage that they're making. Basically, that's one thing. Another thing, I am not sure if I really feel it's a bit tricky to say, because obviously there's an ongoing war in the region between the countries, unfortunately, and to be honest, I'm quite concerned that some of the very, like, for example, the water reservoir and electricity plant has been under attack and that I think can bring to quite a lot of catastrophes and can be quite dangerous, because of course when we talk about war, there are way more things that we can bring to the table, but that specific thing is related to environment as well. And you know what happened in Kamchatka probably as well. There is some leakage of military or some chemicals and used in for military purposes, which basically destroyed a lot of life and below water. So if that can happen now during this war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, it can also damage a lot of things. And as Gohar very well mentioned, considering the poverty and overall economic situation in the country, and of course illiteracy and everything, it can even worsen. And there's another thing, I don't know, I personally don't know, and I hope Gohar would forgive me for saying it, but please feel free to add from your side. From our side, we hear that during this war, there's also a lot of damage to the rivers. Like one side would basically throw a lot of chemicals or rubbish, just being nasty, like a bit childish, trying to ruin or send some message. And then there is not enough water in the region. Of course, there's a huge shortage of water, not only in the war zone territory, but also within Azerbaijan as such. There's a huge shortage of water, and it's of course a global issue. Matt, you're in the video. I'm sorry. Sorry. And of course, it's a global issue, but it's one of the issues that I'm very concerned of in Azerbaijan. Shortage of water. I'm so sorry. I am a bit sleepy still. I will make up better comments and get back to you, but that's it for now from me. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you very much for sharing, and I saw the message that we have around 5 minutes left, so I would encourage you to move to the recommendations, like considering all the structural barriers and legal barriers that we have been discussing, and also keeping in mind that climate justice has a very strong gendered aspect. What would be the recommendations for making it better for those who are the most vulnerable in this process?
To be very fair, I'm not very well aware of the practices abroad, but I would say probably involving and engaging the community, of course, in those talks is one of the key aspects and approaches in that case. Of course, locals would know the best what they need, and involving them more would first raise awareness among them, and second, make them more conscious, and of course, keep country also under little pressure, because once people know what's the problem, they will probably keep addressing it. Another thing, I need to think, because I don't have specific recommendations on the top of my mind, but of course, legal regulations. I think Gohar very well mentioned a lot of things. I can see here legally binding principles, of course, raising women's role. I would say providing women farmers with the necessary tools and facilities and fertilizers and everything. So women are usually are not getting enough to work in the field and to sell it afterwards. They might work as farmers, but they're not visible and they don't have enough to kind of scale it up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Sure, that's a bit poor input contribution, but that's it for now.
No, that's really very valuable. And of course, you'll still have an opportunity to develop this more, because we'll send everything that we capture now to all the group participants so that you have a look and make sure that I have managed to capture it correctly, or just elaborate and add on.
Sure, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Did you discuss forestry already? I don't know whether anyone...
No, not really.
Yeah, I think I need myself to do more research, but I think there's a huge issue in forestry as well in the region, in Azerbaijan in particular. So I'll get back to you on that.
Forestry, do you see this as a legal barrier, that it's not regulated under the law and there is this opportunity to actually exploit the forest, or what exactly do you mean?
I don't know what's happening legally in the country, so that's why I'm saying I need to do my research very well. But yes, of course, there are abusers who are cutting the forest and using it and abusing it, etc. And I've seen some videos of activists protecting it or trying to raise awareness and address the issue in the country. Yeah, another thing is pollution, but I mean it's on a micro level, let me put it that way, because there are a lot of young people and activists and generally community who are coming together and going to clean the beaches and everything, you know. Yeah, pollution like plastics are all around. Of course, reduction of plastic is one of the main, I think, probably requests that I would put forward, and at this level, considering you know, understanding of the environmental issues in the countries. Like, for example, I absolutely love that Georgia banned plastic bags. I don't know how well you implement this kind of decision, but the fact that you already kind of announced it is great. We haven't announced yet the reduction of plastic bags, which is quite an issue because it's also a quite windy city, Baku itself. And when it does happen, all the bags are flying in the air and they're spreading around, and they of course end up landing on the different fields and everything, and in the water. So yeah, and with the oil, of course, the reason why I mentioned it, it damages the water, it damages the life below water. So there should be more better ways of getting it and not leaking in the water and stuff. But I know so little technically about the procedure. I need to do really a good research to be more useful and helpful. Sorry, thanks.
And I'm going to share my screen to make just quick notes from the discussion that we are going to have right now. So we are going to discuss some key relevant issues regarding innovation in technology. First of all, since we are not a big group, I would like to make a brief cycle of introduction. Just mention your name, country, and very briefly, just maybe what's on your mind regarding innovation in technology. Just 1 minute for everyone, and after we will start the discussion. Please, we can start from Katya, probably.
Yes, my name is Katya. I am from Minsk, and I actually have never spoken so much about innovation and technology and how it can help women to gain more equal positions. So I decided that it would be very interesting and helpful.
Thanks for joining. Sasha, please go on.
Yeah, I'm Sasha Gabizon. I'm from Women Engaged for a Common Future, and I'm not based in the region. I'm in Germany at the moment, but of course we work a lot. So I've been in Armenia, Georgia, Belarus, even Ukraine. So yeah, I know the region a bit, and I'm happy to join you today.
Thank you. Nevat, please go on.
I'm Nevat from Armenia, from Women's Resource Center. And for me also, innovation and technology is something new, which is not much discussed. And that's why I choose this topic. And I think, I hope we'll have a good discussion and we'll share our knowledge or experience regarding usage of innovation and technology in protection of women's rights.
Thank you. Konstantin, please go on.
Anna, I'm checking. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm checking with Konstantin if he needs translation or not. Maybe he would join another group. Константин, мы можем попросить перевести вас в другую группу, где на русском языке идет обсуждение. Или вы хотите остаться в этой группе? Konstantin?
Maybe, Nargis, you can chat with Konstantin, please, because we are really very short of time. Irina, please go on.
Hello, my name is Irina. I'm coming from Belarus, Minsk also. Well, technology is a challenge, both I think on the national level and also for our organization. We are looking forward to do security digital audit this month or next month. So looking forward to share with you your ideas, hear from you.
Great, thanks for joining. We have Merita from UN Women and Nargis from your UN Women. Thanks for joining also. If you just want briefly to introduce, please be free.
Okay, this is Nargis Azizova from UN Women Regional Office, participating as observer. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Lisa, also from UN Women as a consultant, also participating as an observer.
Great, thank you. And Konstantin, if you want, you may write in the chat box some information about yourself. So I'm Anna, I'm from Armenia, and maybe some of you already know that Armenia is taking the lead on Action Coalition Group on Innovation and Technology. We are really very happy for this initiative to have Armenia as one of the champion states, champion country in terms of gender equality. So I'm really honored and take this challenge also as a moderator to talk during this 30 minutes with all of you about this important topics in terms of gender equality and in terms of women's representation. So probably we all know that like women and men are not equally represented in this field. This is one of the challenges which we face when we talk about innovation and technology. The gender gap is also quite visible in this field, and this is not only related to social media, but also related to deeply rooted gender stereotypes, which we have in many countries of our region. I'm sure that we do not have representation from Moldova or Ukraine and Russia, unfortunately, but I'm quite sure that the situation is quite similar. Since we know that STEM subjects, usually they are more genderized issues, and maybe all of us know from our own experience that it's quite common to say that boys are much more better in STEM subjects and technology is much more something for boys rather than girls. Right now we are going to put down, and right now we are going to discuss all these challenges in this group. What I want to say, this topic is rather new, even for many, even in terms of SDGs and in terms of UN agencies, and since I know that it started to be something more more important maybe during last 2-3 years, but yes, we still need to discuss it and we still need to bring our recommendations. So like we did in the previous hour breakout room, we're going to have observers, people who are not from our region, but probably if you have some valuable input from the countries which are missing here, we have Ukraine, Moldova, and Russia, and also Georgia, I think. Please go on and make your contributions if you have the information from these 4 countries. Otherwise, we will keep the floor for our respective countries. So what do you think? What are the key structural barriers in terms of innovation in technology? We can go like as a cycle. I will just mention your names and please go on. Maybe we can start from Belarus, Katya and Irina. I would ask you to make your contribution in terms of structural barriers, and I'm going to type it.
Okay, well, as you have already mentioned, the stereotypes, but the stereotypes are also shown in, for example, I know that when people are when women are applying to technological universities, they have lots of discourage from the parents and from even the I don't know how it's called, but when you are getting to university, there is this commission who decides whether you should be in or not. And I heard lots of personal stories when a woman was trying to enter the uni and she was discouraged just inside of the uni. And then after that, after the university in Belarus, if you worked for, if you studied for free, you would need to work for 2 years for the government or any job that government will allocate you. And for example, if a woman has finished like IT faculty, I heard some stories when men were sent to a good IT companies and women were sent to some hospital in a village to look after computers or some local school. And it's so horrible because it is such a different start that is given to the young specialists.
Okay. I just continue that, yeah, I also agree that stereotypes and social norms and roles, these are the most common barriers. We still have gender-divided lessons, like so-called labor lessons at school. So women, girls, they are assigned to do so-called serving labor, and boys are assigned to do technical labor. So on the level of professional development, it's already this development is ruled by the stereotypes, and it's there are a lot of discouragement from not only parents but also teachers at school and the different level of education. Last year we conducted pilot research among 100 young women who are part of IT, who work in IT or going to work in IT, and the biggest challenges they named is a lack of role models. Women they can look at and want to follow or know how they reach their achievements in the career. So I would also mention this.
Navar, maybe you can have some input from Armenia. What's the structural barriers for the country?
I wouldn't say that I'm very much aware, but according to the information that I have, Armenia was one of the countries that has more women engaged in IT sphere than in other countries. From this point of view, it's like a leading country maybe, but anyway, they are not equally represented, and we have the same like stereotypes, and even in starting from schools and kindergarten, that women are directed to choose more like humanitarian subjects or professions, but not technical ones.
Yeah. So in Belarus, the biggest wage gap is in IT sector. It's over 50%. Do you have any information from Armenia, Navar? Do we have also this gender pay gap in IT field for women?
I'm not sure. I can say the information from like people I know who work in the field. It's obvious that men are more in like team leaders and higher levels. They are usually men who take these positions, and consequently their salary is higher. But I don't have like statistical information about gender pay gap in this field.
Yeah, okay. What else will you highlight as a structural barrier for our countries? If Sasha or Marisa, do you have any information regarding other countries from the region? Please make your input as well as, please.
Yeah, I think from relatively, there are indeed more women in in STEM, so science and technology, in your region than in our region. We're even more behind, and the wage gaps are also bigger. Indeed, I think even more needs to be done in Europe, Western Europe, on this issue. And it's really, I think, starting already in the school and in the early years of education. Where choices are made, often also for young children instead of by themselves. So yeah, I think the educational system needs to be looked at very, very closely, of course. And then I think what's also interesting is how technology, since a lot of the technology is designed by men, how it then also might not take into account the specific priorities or needs of women or so. And so I think it would be really interesting if we get to the recommendations later to look at things like how are algorithms influencing decision making on other issues, and how do you make sure that the design of the technology does not then further exclude women later on as well in the in the use of other technologies. Yeah. So having really women in the design phase already engaged, I think, is something which would be important to look at.
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha. We have some input from Belarus. For Belarus, barrier for working women, including those in IT, is a need to combine professional and family life. Women spend twice more time for household duties. Even those who are in IT, they work as HR, PR, or support staff than IT. Yes, I think Navart has raised this issue also, that women are not in the leading positions. The other issue is, which I know from many other countries, is the lack of access to internet, and which was even which were even more so during COVID situation, during COVID pandemics, that many girls, like in many households, when they had two devices for boys and girls, they prefer one device for two children. They rather prefer to go give that device to boys instead of girls. And this is still about the same gender stereotypes. But I think this is the other issue which can be reflected in our structural barriers, since we have also a lack of access to internet. We have lack of access to these devices for women. And Sasha, she has mentioned that we have gender gap in future sectors such as renewable energy as well. Yes, I will put that recommendation. So now we are just jumping to our next topic. If we do not have any valuable input from this one, legal barriers. What do you think? What we need to change in terms of legal barriers? Maybe we can start from Katya, please.
Okay, I wonder whether quotas may help, or, as we have already discussed in the previous group, instead of creating quotas, creating free courses for women, like businesses, big businesses can spend some money on helping women to develop. So to create this leadership courses to gain some skills. For example, I know that women from my university are often sent or go to the free courses from IT companies, but again, they're mostly aimed to make these women not HR, but support teams or something like that. And I wonder whether it can be done on a bigger scale to make them actually leaders, not...
If you do not mind, I will put it in the recommendations section, because this is direct call for action. Oops. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so in terms of legal barriers, what do you think? I mean, this is quite specific topic, and many other countries, they do not have even specific legislation in terms of innovation in technology, just to have legal barriers. But if there are something specific which we want and we see as a barrier, maybe we can put that. For example, I'm a moderator, but I also represent the country. In my country, we do not have specific legal legislation in terms of reporting sexual harassment or, I mean, violence against women in IT field, also in social media. We know that Facebook, for example, it's not very always responsive, and sexual harassment is not happening. Well, it's happening with men as well as, but it's more the issue of women. So I will, if you agree, I will add this lack of legal like provisions to report sexual harassment in IT field, because it's specific and specific issue. And please, Irina. Yeah,
thank you. Well, I'd like to come back what I mentioned among the structural barriers, this gender disaggregated lessons at school. So it's actually part of agreed, approved school program, and you know, theoretically, parents can choose to send their daughters or sons to different lessons, but they are not, and the schools do not encourage parents to do different choices. So I can call it legal barriers.
Mm-hmm.
I also, what is it? I mean, universal is not only related to women in IT, but unfortunately, universal discrimination on the labor market, gender-based discrimination, when women are being asked on the job interview about their family status, whether they're going to get married, how many children they're going to have, what's the age of their children, how they're going to take care of these children. This kind of things also this is against the law, because discrimination is illegal in Belarus, but in practice it does not work. You cannot really bring this case to the court, but still it's a legal barrier for women who are, you know, encountered additional difficulties compared to men when they even entering the job market. And I'm very much supporting your idea about the lack of provision on sexual harassment, dealing with this, not only in legislation, but also like voluntary provisions among the companies, employers. It's also not popular thing, and that should be, I think it should be also part of the recommendation that companies should pay more attention. This was also another conclusion from our research, pilot research, that women were mentioning that in case they have some difficulties, they didn't know where to go, how to ask help within the company.
Irina, just can I clarify the gender-based discrimination? Do you have any legal prohibition in your country?
Yes, we do. In the labor code, it's prohibited to ask not related questions to the main occupation. I mean, not professional questions. It's prohibited gender-based discrimination, race-based, all this, you know, nationality, etc., etc. But exists.
I mean, yeah, so it's legally prohibited, but in practice, it doesn't work. Yeah, so
we don't have any precedents, and it's very difficult to bring this case to court because the burden of proof is divided between both sides, which is not working. So we have to shift the burden of proof more on the employers. But it's details, you know.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. Yeah, please, Katya, I think you wrote something in the chat.
Okay.
I also wonder how much stereotypes in providing toys for children help here. Boys play with more construction, or I think this, and also Sasha mentioned in some school books there are gender roles which are quite strictly mentioned what should real women do and real boy do. So I think this is also all related to the gender stereotypes as a bigger picture, but for sure, I will put it here both.
May I also add maybe a little bit about this gender violence thing?
Yes.
Because, for example, in Belarus, the main universities for to get this IT diplomas are in Minsk, so in the capital, and many families are afraid to let a girl go from small village to a big city because she'll be raped here or she will have sex every night or something like that. So they're wanting to protect her virginity or something like these things, or they're afraid for her because she can be raped. While with boys it's not the case. So even at the point where enter the university from and to relocate from a smaller city to a bigger city.
Nevar, do you have any contribution in terms of legal barriers?
No, I was thinking what kind of legal, as you mentioned, that so we don't have specific legislation, we cannot mention legal barriers. I was also thinking about the barriers in policy level, like in education, the stereotyping things, because for example, in textbooks, even presented than in technology, and revision of the textbooks according to the gender equality principles may bring to some changes in involvement of women in technology as well.
So I put that last suggestion in our recommendation box.
Yeah, and I would like to add to this because I remember we were working on renewable energy with our colleagues in Georgia and Armenia, and were also very practical things like knowing how to do soldering, soldering with the fire thing, and then you put iron together. And the boys had much more exposure to that type of very practical things. So it's not even only about high tech and IT, it's also just about very basic technical things. Yeah. And so I think indeed, if we are talking about these classes and make it mandatory, it should also be about how do you put together a motor, or how do you wield a piece of iron together, or things I have never learned and I would have liked to learn, and which you have to do quite a while before you are able to do it, because it automatically creates advantages for the boys.
Yeah, exactly. So we are now shifting to the recommendations, since we have just 10 minutes left as Hannah is texting us. So I have put two recommendations already from our previous discussion, like creating leadership courses on bigger scale in IT field specifically. And the other recommendation was regarding revision of textbooks in terms of making their non-discriminatory and human rights-based approach. We have from Irina clarification Belarus labor lessons in school. These lessons are gender divided for boys. It's part of school of. Okay, sorry. Yeah, that was from the previous section, sorry. So yeah, and we can now go on in terms of recommendation, what we recommend. Please go on. What we have from Belarus. What are specific recommendations? If right now we are able to solve this issue, maybe we can prioritize 3 recommendations. What are like the most important ones?
Well, then I would start with canceling this practice or policy of having gender divided lessons at school. So it should be eliminated because it's very out of date. And we have new generation of parents who does not want to support this norm. But this is on the level of policy. Second, I would think about suggest having quota, so-called gender ball or gender mark, which could be given to girls who are being admitted to the IT schools, universities. So to give them encouragement. and promote this professional development for girls in STEM, or in Germany it's called MINT area, MINT sector. So more role models, social promotion, different campaigns. Yeah.
Gender quota at IT schools, yeah, universities, which will promote women's role, which will promote women's
and mentorship programs for women entering the IT from, let's say, more experienced female leaders.
Leadership course, mentoring, yeah, mentoring.
Which should be budgeted by the state, which should be paid by the state or university. So it should not be paid by international community, which is the case now, when the UN, let's say, paying it from their project. It should be paid by the government. So it should become part of the state policy and the legislation.
So, yeah, we have awareness campaigns with more women in STEM. Yes, totally agree. And also working every time with gender stereotypes. I think it's quite obvious for all our maybe breakout rooms. Yeah, awards for gender and technology. I will put it also here. Yeah. Thank you. What else? I think we also need maybe prohibit sexual harassment. I mean, have more visible tools in the field of prohibition of sexual harassment in STEM, in social media, because like innovation and technology also about this. And also the other thing which I want to raise is about probably it's about build market awareness of potential, like for innovative measures for which were created by women, because in the market we do not have too much information what is created by women and how it can be used, because all this advertisement goes to males, and as also Sasha mentioned, these IT products, they are mainly developed by males and they are not responsive to women's needs. Maybe we need more awareness raising also about this product. We have Irina in Belarus, some great examples from IT special programs for women coming back to work after maternity leave paid by company. Yeah, I will put it. Maybe we can like generally formulate this recommendation to have more like policies and job in labor market to encourage women to be in this field, and also to combine maternity and households. Do we have any more recommendations? Yeah, I think it's easier for you to write in chat, family and women friendly policies. Yes.
Maybe trying to create some money inspiration, I mean scholarships for specifically for women who enter the technical universities.
I will put it with mentoring women by the state plus scholarships. Yeah. Yeah. So if you have any specific recommendation in terms of COVID-19, we know that it was another challenge also for innovation in technology, because our offline life has shifted and moved to the offline. Please go on. What are key specific recommendations in terms of COVID and this issue? If you have some ideas, please. No specific, because like in Armenia, we face this lack of devices and internet during COVID for girls. And as I have already mentioned, even this discrimination was sort of gender segregated, if I can say this. So I will put that one during COVID, lack of access to IT for girls. I'm just talking about school classes, because many girls, like in compare with boys, they used to miss the classes, online classes during COVID. Do you have any specific recommendation?
I think we can add a recommendation regarding usage of technology and innovations in fighting against gender-based violence. For example, in Armenia, there is a new, like an app, which is for women to have in their mobile phones and to call for help if they are victims of domestic violence or any other like gender-based violence. It is in a stage that is not used much yet, but I think that usage of these innovative technologies for protection of women's rights is also very important, and it can also improve involvement of women in the technology sphere.
Yes, Irina, please.
I would also add that as women are mostly concentrating, or often concentrating in social spheres, which is poorly paid, they can be especially particularly affected by COVID, because these sectors are not digitally, let's say, equipped. It's like continue what Nwart said, bringing technologies to gender-based violence prevention, or bringing technology to social work, or to school, where women are the most employers. So this was also the case in Belarus. There were a lot of conversations about how we can protect doctors, health workers, but there was very poor response how we can protect social workers, which are mostly women, because they don't have anything to do their work digitally. There is no literacy, digital literacy for them. There are no resources for them. There are no possibilities even to exchange. So I think that we have to bring technologies to those sectors which are not really. We don't see the role of technologies there. And a lot of women that are concentrated in these sectors.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we are about to return to the bigger group. I want to say a big thank you for your valuable inputs. We're still in touch, and if you still remember something important which is not on our board, please go back to me. I will add it. Thank you, and see you in the bigger room.
Survey among the women that have directly affected by the conflict, and not to propose ready-made solutions for all of them, because conflicts are different, although there is a lot of common to share, but definitely we need to go to the place to analyze the situation based on the real facts and figures, and also and also to take into account and to take women not as a whole, but also to have different stratas of the women, refugees, young women, elderly women, women with disabilities, and women with child in their family. So I think that the data collection, needs-based data collection is very important, but also we need to formulate the needs of the different women that are affected by the conflict, and only after that to propose recommendations, targeted recommendations to all groups of the women. We are in the process of developing our strategy, how to go forward. And my intention to participate in this meeting, also to learn from best experience from others, what we need to do, what we didn't did, and what we can do better in order to really address the needs of women that are affected by the conflict, what we can do further on. So this is my reflection on this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It sounds to me like you already mentioned both the barriers and the recommendations as well. And I'm noting all of this down. I'm having some technical difficulties with sharing my screen, and I was wondering if some of my colleagues from WECF, I'm not sure who is in here, if you have the organizer's role as well, if you could share the screen, that would be really helpful. I'm taking notes, but I can right
make
now it's difficult for me.
I'm realizing that you're not a co-host, but yes, I can share the screen in a second. Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you very much. So I've taken down the previous comments already in the notes, and I've written down that the recommendations included more women in peacemaking and security work, involvement in women formal and informal negotiations, profound needs assessment of women affected by conflict, and development of programs in response to those needs.
May
I? Yes, please go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think, well, thank you everybody for sharing your thoughts. I think everything goes to education. We need to look at to how many youngsters are engaged, not receiving education in that regard, and how many, for example, if I have chosen to study international relations or something that relatable to professions, that is relatable to in future employ me in the sector where I can have the opportunity to be engaged, right, in peaceful or in security or peace maintenance issues. Therefore, I think employment practices in Georgia in that regard is very low. I mean, how many women we've seen to be the, for example, ambassadors of Georgia in different countries? How many women are there? Very few. As Mariam said, right? How many faculties are thought? How many, faculties are thought in that regard? None. I mean, there are very few. So I think we still are pushing. Yes, it needs to be done, but what could be the resolution? I think we need to look at the higher education, not only higher education system, but secondary education system, and we need to see what are the, because in Georgia we have like for starting from 10th grade, you can choose, there are elective subjects that could be taught besides academic curriculum. And it could be, one of the tactics will be that you allow youngsters to choose a subject that teaches, conflicts, on how the conflicts are resolved, how the peace are made, everything that is that teaches even Easter partnership thing, even anything that raises their awareness in that regard. And second is, when I learned, for example, if I had chosen that profession, how my government assists, or how I'm going to be realized in professionally, with the profession I chose. So employment practices are low, and with civil society or grassroots organizations, how many women are run by these by running the organizations. We should look at that, and we need to gather those women and help. And I think one of the things that they could do is to have TO2 for them, women running these grassroots organizations, and offer them training of trainers or educational program that would promote this idea, and that would help them to, or increase their competencies to engage more in peace and security field. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be one of the recommendations, I guess. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've noted down. And
yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would also like to add some things. I'm kind of agree with the Christina, who is also from Armenia, but I also want to use the platform to talk about the conflict we are experiencing now. Actually, it's not the conflict, but the war and the attack against Armenia and the Artsakh. And maybe I will talk a lot about recommendations, not the structural barriers, because like all we need now, especially in the peace building, from the peace building side and the context of peace, is just to do recommendations. And I think that what we can do is at least to show our support and to act, to do something to stop the attacks and the conflicts. And because all of us are from different organizations who are interested in peace, and the peace is one of the top priorities for I hope all of us, maybe we have to write some articles, we have to do some acts to show the international support to Armenia, and to show that what Azerbaijan and Turkey is doing now is kind of problematic and against the whole peace building ideas. This is what I think is important, because now we can say that we have a problematic situation in my country and the region generally, because in my point of view, this is something which can affect not only in Armenia, but the whole region too. And what I want to say is everyone knows about the situation, but we receive very limited attention and the maybe articles and support from the international community. So I think that the NGOs, civil society generally, the whole human rights organizations, maybe UN, EU, like, I don't know, generally everyone who has a little bit capacity and the audition, like all of us should write and talk about the topic, because this is not specific in Armenia, and this is not a conflict. This is something that we have to do as a peace builders and as a people who are interested in peace, because like we can see lots of women affected in the world, civilians affected, because the cities and the capitals are under attack now. So this is not even the problem of the front line, like the whole cities and peaceful population is under attack now. That's why I think that this is quite important to talk and to act as a peace builders, to do something from our level also. Thank you. I can't hear you because you are unmuted.
I'm sorry. I said thank you so much for being with us today and for finding time to be in these consultations, and for sharing what you shared. What I noted down from your words are several actually points on different levels. One is expressing international solidarity with Armenia and to address the ongoing conflict. Another thing that you mentioned is supporting grassroots organizations and groups working to address the effects of conflict. You also talked about the importance of raising awareness overall about conflicts in the region and how they may impact more than just one country and one geography. So I think those are all very important recommendations coming from your intervention in your specific situation, and I'm taking notes of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to take the floor and speak to either three of those? So we have some comments already on structural barriers. We have some recommendations, quite a few of those actually. Very little right now on legal barriers that has been mentioned. So please go ahead, colleagues. I know that some of the recommendations may be connected to other sections where you have participated. For example, we talked about the women's movement or the feminist movement and movement building in general, and women being at the forefront of providing the response. So don't feel shy if you feel like some of your recommendations are overlapping. Or some of your comments. I think there is a specific context to women, peace and security agenda for our region where we cannot underestimate the importance of this topic for our region. I don't see if there's anything in the chat as well. To include more women participants in commissions, boards, decision-making groups, monitoring processes to promote globally important issues and globally and locally. Thank you, Emma. Maybe there are some comments also from participants from Ukraine. They haven't spoken yet. We have heard from Georgia, Armenia, Moldova. Maybe there is some comment and response from the Ukrainian context.
Yes, I would like to add, in terms of Ukraine, I think women are not involved in the process of negotiations in different levels. And that is why, in terms of participations, not all groups of women, not all vulnerable groups are heard, are vocal. And even if some women are involved in negotiations, they face sexism as well. And I also think that now we, for example, see some other politicians or another representative of men involved and still no women. So I think it's quite an issue for now.
So I'm hearing you talk about both lack of women representation in general, and also when women participate, they face sexism and patriarchal stereotypical attitudes. So this is like a double problem, and I can imagine it's not only a challenge for Ukraine, but for other countries as well. I'm noting this down. And you're talking about track 1 process, if I'm understanding correctly, like the high-level negotiations,
yes,
specifically.
Security in Ukraine.
In all the level of education and employment, inclusive education needs to be mentioned. Thank you. I saw already also the question how useful or not the national action plans have been in promoting women, peace and security. Perhaps some of you would like to speak to that. We have a section on legal barriers, and it can be both a supporting tool or also a barrier for some of us. So if you have a national action plan or if you don't, you can mention whether it's effective, working effectively for you or not. Please, you're welcome to speak or write about that as well.
Does anyone have a comment maybe about this issue? Have you participated in drafting or monitoring the national action plans in your country? Would you like to speak to this process from your experience and or maybe voice some recommendations? Mm-hmm. I'm referencing also, I'm looking at a document that was constructed together in Geneva last year, which was part of the regional consultations on the UNECE region. And I was part of the working group that compiled the document on women, peace and security. And I can mention to you some of the barriers that were included there. And if you find that some of them resonate as well with your region or with your country, we can you can put a little plus, or you can add this in the chat. And we can also add them to our presentation as relevant. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, I'm seeing that another comment: in COVID situation, many women are discriminated and girls bullied because they follow the security rules. Where can we put it? I think it's a very important comment, and I will add it to other comments. It's related to security and COVID. So thank you. In COVID times, women. You talk about the fact that women are following security regulations like masks and gloves and everything.
This is them.
They.
This is Emma talking. Can I please?
Go ahead. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's about both women, because you know that women are more like conscious about all these deep issues, and sometimes our children are also bullied at school. We just observe it. They are bullied because they are following the rules and they listen to the specialists' opinions and how they have to be secure and to think about the other people's life, and they are bullied too. By other categories of people, by the other people, by society. So it's a burden issue because they become discriminated. So how can we tackle this? How can we I don't know, fight with this or solve this problem? Because this is very important. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we see here the intersection of security issues and gender issues in the context of COVID specifically. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. We have a bit less than 10 minutes left for this group. And I would like to invite those who haven't spoken yet to take a word if you would like to add something. Perhaps you have some ideas coming from previous comments of our colleagues.
I see there's a question from Alia in the chat. She's asking how useful or not have the UNSCR 1325 national action plans been?
Action plans. Mm-hmm. I've put this into other comments, and I've asked this question to the group. So far, I haven't received any responses. In our previous group, we had a comment about lack of participatory mechanisms for consultations or for developing policies. I want to check with this group if you find that this is also the case with the national action plans, that maybe it's a legal barrier or a challenge, structural barrier in your context, that national action plans are developed without significant consultation or participation of civil society, or without involving civil society in implementation. If anybody would like to comment about that, please go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I would
5 more minutes from Hannah. Yes, go ahead.
Maybe I would contribute to the structural barriers again, because as far as I know, there is no adequate environment created for girls in military schools, and it leads us to lack of women in peace operations. So there are very, very few women soldiers, at least in Georgia. And in environment, I mean the schools and the places where they live, and also the lecturers and their approaches, and how to say, the overall process, the whole process needs to be adjusted to needs of girls and women.
You're talking about education in military schools or overall?
Both. I mean, both the education as well as their environment.
I also wrote down something from the chat, low number of women in the police and security organizations. And another remark on the plan relates to performance indicators that in some cases are not clear, difficult to measure, and do not take into account the medium-term and long-term impact. It would also be desirable to have a more comprehensive and detailed monitoring part of the plan as well. So some plans do not include a comprehensive monitoring measure, which makes it difficult to actually monitor the implementation properly. Thank you so much about on your comments on the plan. Adriana is writing comments about lack of access to international organizations to the occupied territories. If this is the context of Ukraine, to the opportunity to hear women from the occupied territories. Regarding NAP, your organization participated in drafting the NAP, and a lot of representatives of the ministries did not understand what this plan was and what recommendations they could make. So lack of access to work with uncontrolled territories, Ukraine, and hear the needs of women there. And lack of understanding among government about the purpose of the NAP. Thank you. We've added some legal barriers as well, the underrepresentation of civil society structures in the imitation of the NAP, performance indicators. So Hannah is, I think, helping me, and she's putting some comments there as well, moving them to the legal barriers. There is also a comment about the media covering the conflicts. Maybe we have to encourage media to focus more on human aspects of the war rather than armament and military equipment. So I put this also in the structural barriers and also recommendations. So media coverage of war focuses more on military than human aspects of war. Emma writes that there are more men than women there. Can you say where there is more women than men than women? And there is another comment from Mariam. Women are in a socially disadvantaged situation in IDP settlements. Therefore, assessing the situation of women and implementing activities in this regard. Recommendation. I don't know if we have space for another sticky. Thank you, Hannah. So assessing and addressing needs of women in the displacement settlements. Thank you, Mariam. Our time is coming to an end, and thank you very much for your participation and for your ideas.
Go ahead, Navad.
Yeah, I am Navad from Armenia. I'm a lawyer from Women's Resource Center, organization working on women's rights, feminist organization based in Yerevan. And I hope to have a fruitful discussion.
Katerina.
Hello, my name is Katerina Bondar, and I'm based in Switzerland, and I'm representing the World Federation of Ukrainian Women Organizations.
Thank you, Kathy. So just to remind you that these breakout sessions will also be recorded. So if you have any objections, this is the time to say. Otherwise, we'll continue to record it. And yeah, maybe I'll just do a very short introduction, like 2 minutes, and then we can directly start the discussions, because this breakout sessions is more about this active discussions and practical side of it. So the economic justice. Yeah, of course, there is no one model for all, and everyone has a right to claim and contribute to building another world that is possible. When we're talking about the economic justice, I think that one of the very key points here is the economic self-determination that gives people the ability to take control over their natural resources and use those resources for their own ends or collective use. And the women's economic agency is fundamental to mitigating the often cyclical nature of poverty and denial of education, safety, and security. And then another issue is the substantive equality and justice that are the core of the economy. So of course it goes with the non-discrimination as the integral part of the equality that ensures that no one is denied their right because of the factors such as gender, language, religion, sexual orientation, etc., etc. There is this just distribution for all without monopolization, which I don't think that it requires any kind of explanation at this point. And of course, the feminist and cross-movement solidarity as the key factor. So this is not an exhaustive list. You're free to add as much key topics as you consider proper. And we can just start right now with the discussion of what are the structural barriers that we face in order to have just economy or just economy for women. We can put it like this. In the chat, I will also share the slides that we are using so that you can open, and we will have the interactive part. Just a minute, I'll just copy the link in the chat. So while discussing, I will also be taking notes in the slides directly, but this is an open slide, so any one of you can also contribute. Do you see the link? Yes. So if you go to the link and click slide 16, it says economic justice. And then we have 4 sticky notes with structural barriers, legal barriers, recommendations, and any other comments that you find relevant to share. So we can use this place to start brainstorming and collecting what we have to share. And as we have said in the very beginning in our solidarity principles, we encourage all of you to share, because this is the working group type of discussion. So all of your opinions are very important, and I'll do my best to capture what you say. But in case I miss anything, you will also have an opportunity to have a look at the notes before the final policy document is prepared. So you'll have an opportunity to add, change, comment, criticize anything that you find relevant. So yeah, I'll stop here and I'll give floor to you just to start the discussions about this. Let's start with the structural barriers. Like when we're talking about economic justice, what are the structural barriers that we're facing? And it can be on the level of our nations, like national level, or it can be region-wide. You're free to decide, or it can be local.
Yeah, maybe we should start with examples from different regions or countries or so. But I remember also working with you in Georgia, that for women, especially in rural areas, when we tried to create like cooperatives, women's cooperatives, often the traditions and the fact that women were supposed to do a lot of the homework was like a barrier, because it was yeah, there was like gender roles, you know, who would take care of what, and not so easy to get, you know, in the rural areas a cooperative or so for energy, as we were working on, led by women, mostly because of maybe the mindset. Yeah, so that's maybe a barrier. I don't know.
May add such a big thing as capitalism here, because especially it's a system that was created by men with a man rules competition, and if we don't add some local help from local communities, or maybe governmental help towards some socially vulnerable groups, it can be a very unjust system. Well, basically, in this system, the ones who have more private property are stronger, and historically, men were the ones who were gaining the property. So it's a thing that has a big history in which women were the oppressed side.
Women were oppressed, you said?
Yeah.
Thank you, Katya. And what else comes in your mind? Like what parts of capitalism? Because capitalism is for sure one of the big barriers that we're facing, but it also has so many layers, and yeah, it boils down into some very concrete struggles that we're facing. So if you could come up with that, that would also be very helpful.
Well, here, I think it will be different on our local levels. Well, in Belarus, we have this weird capitalistic system, but of course, if we can start with, I think that the salaries which are not equal is a side effect of capitalism. Then the thing that women are not helped in their reproduction. How do I, like when women have children, capitalism does not encourage women to come back to the force in the equal rights as men do, or not equal rights, but equal opportunities. And then there is this gap created when women who had children come back to the work, and then there is a huge gap in salaries.
Thanks, Katya. Bart, Koha, Katerina.
I think that the main barrier here for Armenian context is the gender roles or traditional values, so-called, and there is some concept of traditional family, which is changing, of course, but there are still there is still this vision that a man is the one who has to earn money to economically support the family, and woman is the one who doesn't necessarily need this, and this is reflected in the salaries because this is the understanding that is also in the mind of the employees, and they when, for example, when a woman is getting married, her salary is not changing, and usually it is already the employees they think that the woman will get pregnant and will go to the maternity leave, and they are starting already to think about other to get someone who will replace her. But when the man gets married, this is the opposite situation, and usually his salary is raised, and he is considered the one who needs more money at this situation. So the social gender roles and traditional understanding of the roles in the family is also reflecting the economic justice situation.
Mm-hmm.
If you can allow, I will just add to what Navart has said. It is important to know that in Armenia, we, at the national level, we do not have many barriers because we have very good legislation. There is very good support from the highest level, encouraging women to engage in political life, in economic life. They're encouraging the women's economic involvement in different small businesses, etc. But the problem lies within the woman herself. That's another tradition. Very often when we talk in the communities, we're trying to engage women. They are quite active. They have lots of ideas. But when it comes to taking the role, for instance, setting a cooperative, for example, who is signing the paper? They bring in the men of their families. All the legacy issues are done by men. And if you look even at the electoral system, any other place, women are very active, but when it comes to taking roles, they say, we're not interested, we don't want. It's the behavior change that we have to do within the woman. The barrier is in herself, in how she perceives her role in the society. It's the false modesty, I would say. Thank you.
I would have a follow-up question on that, Kohar, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you said that women are the ones who, where we should look for the problem. I'm going to just share my screen as well, that you can see what I'm typing. How would you approach that? Like, what should be done in order to make sure that women, and I put it like in the legal barriers, because you said that there is a very good legislation supporting women's economic involvement in economic life, but women shy away from taking responsibility. Would that be the correct way of putting what you have said?
Yeah, it's not that they are blocked from doing that. Everything is there, it's open, but they are reluctant. It's maybe they're unsure. There is they are not quite self-assured, maybe, and it's a very long process. It's not going to happen overnight. These are things that should be done by encouraging women, by highlighting the successes that they have. One of good examples that we had recently, there was the awards that the government has given to the so-called heroes of our times. And among those who were encouraged were initiatives by young women who were opening small businesses, and they were succeeding. So these are the things that are happening at the national level, but that has to be the biggest obstacle is at the low community level. That's where the perceptions should be broken. That's the disparity that we have. Women's rely on self-assurance, being sure that they can make it. I can do it. That's the big behavior change message that we have to put in. It's going to take time.
Thank you.
And what about
Navarre agrees? Yeah.
And what about quotas? Would that help? I mean, in the EU, for example, many countries have set like voluntary quotas for women in business, like that you need to have at least whatever 30% women in your boards of directors or so. But these are voluntary for companies. And it's only for the big companies which are on the stock exchange.
This could work. I know they have quotas for the people with disabilities, with certain problems, and they're encouraged, and the employees are encouraged to take people with disabilities. And the same approach can be given to, for instance, young entrepreneurs, for example. That's a good option to look at.
I guess also school education should be changed, because if women feel so not so sure in themselves, then the problem is probably a very long psychological problem, which goes back to school, families. So it's a big structural change that should be done. So to encourage women more, not to say that, hey, you will grow up and have your children and that's kind of all, but to inspire them and to get this thought into their minds that they're actually very strong, that they can achieve things, etc.
And also paternity, if I may, paternity leaves should be encouraged, because in practically, for instance, if we take Europe, in almost all countries, there is legislation regarding paternity leaves, but in fact they are not encouraged, and then many men do not take them, do not profit of this opportunity, and do not let then women as well opportunity to also maybe cope with their work duties or some other obligations.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good point. And just to note that Armenia has recently adopted a law for paternity leave, just a few days only. But there is this also in our legislation. 2 or 3 days, I think, what they did. But a good beginning.
So they get 3 days of paternity leave?
I'm not sure. I think it's a few days, men.
Yeah.
Yes, just it's a question of days only, but that's good.
Yeah. And are they obliged to take it, or is it voluntary?
I'm not sure. I have to check, but it's in the law. They can.
Yeah.
No, actually, we had it. We have it for some years already, because the possibility to take paternity leave, but it was not paid. And now they introduced some short period of paid paternity leave. But the legislation never had any barrier, so it was gender neutral, and it meant that both parents, one of the parents, mother or father, can take this leave to take care of the child. But in practice, almost like 99%, if not 100%, always mothers take maternity leave, but not fathers.
So that is also a structural barrier, right? In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, Gohar and Valentina, you're saying that, because like in France, they also just last week passed by the parliament a new law on paternity leave, in which, and they already had paternity leave, voluntary and paid, but now they made it obligatory. So now fathers have to take 2 weeks or so, I think. That's really because they were not using this option. Yeah. But, yeah. So I think it's indeed, we have some of these really great instruments, but then they're not used, and then you have to change them a bit. Yeah.
In Switzerland, only I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, the paternity leave was one of the questions decided on the referendum. So actually, the answer was the answer of the population was yes, but it's still not clear. I think from what date it will be implemented, and then also if actually men will be taking it, will be using it. So we'll see how it will work in practice. But it's also approximately 2 weeks
paid leave.
Okay.
And also, I would like to add in respect of the child access to and the affordability of child care facilities, because it is also very important for in the society. Because in many countries, in some countries, for instance, I mean, I'm taking the example of Switzerland. It's quite many mothers are staying actually at home because it is difficult to get a place in the childcare facility like kindergarten or something else. And also it's quite expensive as well. It can be quite expensive. So it's very often a choice because of the lack of enough of the childcare facilities. Or because of the price of it, that the women cannot, that basically that this conservative kind of attitudes are conserved as they are kept in the society, because then the mother, it's basically natural choice that it will be the mother who will be staying at home with a child.
Yeah, thank you. That's yeah, sorry.
That's better in Armenia, no, or not? You have
no. It's a very good point that has been just raised, and I think we can directly link it to recommendations. Because we can speak beautiful things and make recommendations, but what is important is to have financial instruments and to have the state to allocate certain funds for creating this infrastructure so that both men and women are able to leave their child and go back to workforce. So that's the financial instrument should also be in place, and they should be favoring women's engagement in the workforce, like creches, I don't know, kindergartens and all these things. Thank you.
And I would like also to add as a legal barrier, the substantive equality principle, which is not mentioned in our constitution. For example, in Georgia, I know that you have this principle in your constitutions, and it's kind of binding for the state to make efforts to make like legislation and practice in order to ensure substantive equality for men and women. And this kind of regulation, we don't have this kind of regulation in our constitution, so it's more like on the like government decides what in which extent to make policies or legislation for economic justice, including also.
And I think we have kind of not mixed, but have touched upon all of the topics. So I'm kind of trying to capture it in all three sticker notes. So I just hope that you're following, and just let me know if I'm capturing anything incorrectly or if I'm missing anything. So,
what about violence in the workplace? Because you're working on that, Salome, no?
Yes.
On trying to limit or change violence in the workplace because of the new ILO convention on that. Is that something important we should add?
Yes, definitely. I think that violence and harassment specifically can be one of the structural barriers that the workplace.
Yeah, and speaking about the work places, since we're doing a lot of work related to chemical safety, there should be special recommendations and provisions to protect women's health in the workplace, because it's natural that women's and men's organisms are different, and if we are protecting the woman, we are thinking also about the future generation, about the women of reproductive age. And that's also a very important aspect of encouraging women to engage and safely engage in all sorts of economic activities. We are facing difficulties of women, for instance, working in the greenhouses and the conditions that they had with the application of pesticides and these humid and very hot conditions, and working hard there should be some also legal provisions to protect women in workplaces where they're exposed to hazardous chemicals and they're protected, especially. Thank you.
And also specific provisions for women who are, for pregnant women as well. I think that they have to be in basically in the legislation of each country, each state.
We should be careful here because, for example, Belarus takes that into consideration, and what it does, it just bans all this kind of work for women. So there is a list of work or jobs that are not, that women legally can't go into. And this is vice versa. It is a big obstacle because, first of all, why? And the second thing is that government decides that, or a woman, she will have children, therefore she can't work here. And this is also not correct. And here, in general, I will just add a bit that many laws in Belarus are based on these gender roles. For example, in Belarus, it's not a good thing we have death penalty, right? And for example, only men can be killed. Sorry, but can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay, so only men can be killed with this governmental thing, death penalty, and women can't. Women can't, and I think it's because that they think that, or women, she will still be able to have children, therefore we'll just keep her. And no, I'm not saying that everyone should have the right to be killed by the government, but still it's a little point that when we are creating the laws, we should not think that these people have very different roles. Yes, we should help them because they have different roles, like for example, at the workplaces, instead of banning the jobs, we should somehow think how their health can be damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just before you say hello to the newcomers, I see Olga also joined us and Pancho. I would just like to say that it might be an idea to say that you need to protect also the future generations. That's why we have laws which protect women more strictly maybe than men. But of course, men should also be protected at the highest level. So you should maybe take the protection of the most vulnerable to then be for all genders. Yeah? Because indeed you don't want to exclude women then from jobs. You just need to make sure that these jobs are safer and not toxic neither to women or men. But I do agree that we have also seen that as a problem in legislation, for example, in Germany as well. Back to you, Salome. I don't know if you want to introduce the newcomers.
Oh, I can't see because I'm sharing my screen. I can't see if
Okay, I can see them. We can just ask Pancho and Olga. I think you joined us just now, right? Maybe you can just say hello, where you're from. We already did that.
Hello. Hello, my name is Olga Poynezeva. I am from ECA based in Moscow. And we work for Eastern Europe, Caucasus and Central Asia on economic issues, especially chemical safety. And I work for trade and sustainable development issues.
Thank you, Olga.
And Pancho, you want to say hello? Hello, hello, Pancho. We can't hear you. Pancho. Hello, hello, Pancho. Can't hear you. Oh, well, maybe you can write in the chat.
Okay, so we have around 10 minutes left before we round up. So I wanted to maybe focus a little bit more on the legal barriers because we have shared fragmentally, but we never actually concentrated as a brainstorming. So what do you think are the main legal barriers when it comes to economic justice? We have definitely mentioned quite a number of these barriers, but if there is anything else that you would like to add here.
I would like to add
Yeah, please go ahead.
About sexual harassment. Sorry. In Armenia, we don't have any regulation of sexual harassment and any liability, responsibility for sexual harassment, which is a huge legal barrier for women's security in workplace, and it's definitely affect also economic justice issues.
What else?
Also, again, when we are creating the laws, we should be careful how they will be implemented. Again, example from Belarus, we have 3 years maternity leave. This is kind of nice, but on the other hand, women is just thrown away from the workforce for 3 years. It is so difficult to come back after such a long period. So either to make it
Hello?
I'm sorry, my internet broke, so here. Katya, sorry, you were saying that the maternity leave for 3 years can be a challenge because women find it difficult to... Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So I have captured that as the legal barrier, but that's, on the other hand, you're not obliged to leave for 3 years, right? There is this option that you can.
Yeah, but many women do, because again, there is problem with kindergartens, etc.
Maybe we lost some people. I was partly gone for a moment. I'm not sure if Katja was there. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I was also disconnected for a second.
Just maybe not maternity leave for 3 years make it difficult, but maternity leave only for women or something like that. Because if I'm not mistaken, if a man wants to get it, then there should be some. You should explain to the government why men should it. For example, women is working or something like that. And also it means that when a woman gets a child, then she wants to get as many children as possible in this kind of 3 years thing. So it's a loop. When you are with one child, then you think, okay, I am for 3 years here. Maybe there should be more children. And then it just comes to a point when a woman is out of the workforce for so many years, like 6 or even more. Maybe it's not actually that true. It's just my thought. So I would question that.
Okay.
It just, if they're planning to have more than one child, it's done from one period, and then yes, it makes it.
But I see the logic in that if we say that there is this as a structural barrier, like if you have to live for 3 years, then you might as well use this time to make sure that you don't use another 3 years, but on the other hand, just finish with this reproduction and then go to work. So I don't know, that in a way can be an issue. Okay. And for the sake of time, I would suggest to move to the recommendations part. I think that a lot of what you have shared logically translates into the recommendations. So if we say that there are there is a legal barrier of having no law on sexual harassment, then the recommendation, of course, would be to have the law on sexual harassment. So that's, of course, very visible from the barriers that we have listed. But if there is something specific like that we haven't mentioned so far, we still have 5 minutes to do that. And I would encourage the newcomers who have not shared yet to contribute, and maybe you had a chance to look at what we have already listed on the sticky notes. Please just take your time, and whoever is ready, please share.
I would like to add regarding the equal pay as well, because it is an important barrier, but as well, I mean, there have to be some mechanism to ensure that this principle of equal salaries, equal pay for women and men is respected. Because in many countries, in fact, according to statistics, in both public and private areas, and especially in private sphere, as this principle is not respected, and there are still, even for instance, in Switzerland, it's about 6 to 8% of differences in the salaries for the same job roles, for the same work.
I have a question about the property. Do you think this is something that affects the economic justice, like how the property is distributed among the genders, like, for example, giving everything to the son or to the firstborn, or any kind of this very local, traditional, and typical for our region practice?
Yeah, that's even a problem in our case. For example, very few farms are owned by the women because of that tradition, of course. Yeah. So I don't know how that is in your countries.
Yeah, in Georgian case, I can confidently say that when it comes to owning a property, land, or any kind of the thing that is wealthy, like wealth, women are not the ones who get this. So this is definitely the structural barrier. And even though we have it in the law indicated that all the children are equal and you should not differentiate it based on sex, well, people still do it on the level of practice. So.
Yeah, I wanted to come back to Katja's point on education. Mm-hmm. And I do think indeed that there are some good practices of leadership and mentoring, and creating these spaces to learn how to manage or lead an organization, and I think that is something we might want to put under the recommendations of as well. And that is something the feminist organizations can also work on.
How to manage and lead, right?
Yeah, so leadership. Yeah. As you said before, yeah, that, or I think Gohar said it, that as soon as then the papers need to be signed to be the owner or so, that there's also this lack of confidence, yeah? And so to address that lack of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I actually heard something like that from an owner of a business. He was saying that instead of creating quotas, maybe it's more beneficial to create some free courses for women. So when they are entering the workforce, they can be, so these courses will help to develop their skills. And this are just courses for everyone. So a business creates these free courses for women, not only for the employees in the company.
And it can be especially for young women, and it can also be like in a mentoring. So you tag along with someone who is in the position of leadership. Yeah. Hey, I think we have to soon go back, huh?
Yeah, we have 24 seconds left. And yeah, if there are some burning things that you want me to capture, this is the time. But if not, thank you so much for your active participation. Our second round of breakout session is over. And now I would like to give floor to our co-facilitator and moderator, Oksana, who will shortly summarize the process and share the next steps, what to expect from us in the following days and weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Oksana, you're muted.
Okay. Hello? Can you hear me? Great, thank you. I also want to thank everyone for your time, for your energy, and for your ideas. As we were mentioning in the group on women, peace, and security just now, some of us are joining from locations of ongoing, very active phase of violent conflict, and we were talking about the different roles that women are playing and how often we are both drawn to respond to immediate consequences of the conflict, but also advocacy and strategic solidarity is very important. So I hope that for you, this space has been also a space of strategic cross-national solidarity and the opportunity to voice your experience, your concerns, and your recommendations. All of the sessions, including the working groups, have been recorded on video, and this is mostly for us to be able to take more detailed notes and compile the report with recommendations based on your input. So we will be working on the text of these recommendations going forward, and as we mentioned in the text of the invitation, you will be receiving the draft of this text. There is a second round of consultations that is preliminarily planned for this region as well, and it was originally intended to be with government and other stakeholders. Right now we are discussing when and whether this consultation will take place, again, given the political nature instability in the region. But I just wanted to put this on the table that it was also part of our plan. And in any event, because we have the contact information of all of you, we will be following up with you in terms of the text and the input. And please feel free to add also in the written form anything that you didn't feel comfortable or able to share with us during this time, so that the maximum of your experience and of your needs goes forward and is used for further advocacy. And I want to thank all of our colleagues who have really invested a lot in putting together this process and this space, for supporting us in taking notes, in ensuring interpretation. It really is a collective effort. And I think it's a great model of how we can cross boundaries and cross borders, even in challenging times like this. I also wish you all to take care of yourself, not to forget about your personal well-being, rest, and take time to support yourself so that we can be more sustainable in going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oksana. So, and thanks everybody, of course, for this engagement, and we'll be in touch.
Before everyone leaves, may I ask if we can do a good, big group photo?
Mm-hmm.
So if whoever's sharing their screen, if they just stop sharing their screen, perfect. So just so you know as well, actually I'll show that to you before we leave. We do have we have a Trello board, just like the Generation Equality Trello board. And here we are going to update a lot of the quotes from you from today, and we will check in with you if we can borrow your quote. You will also find, so this is what it looks like. And then once we start, we have an illustrator who will put what you have said in words now, they will put that into art. And then we're going to upload them here. And these are collectively owned by all of us, and you can use them for your social media. So you click on the quote card, and here there are some suggestions for messages, but you can change them. We currently have in translation into Russian and English, so please feel free to use these as much as you want. In addition, we have two websites. So we have one in English, they're both the same, and then there's translated into Russian.
where you get more information about the bigger roadmap of these sub-regional consultations and thematic consultations, because this is an ongoing project, and there's going to be some other sub-regional consultations in Central Asia, for example, and then we're going to look more into depth into these themes that we looked at today. And feel free to use Feminists Want System Change on social media if you want us to regram or retweet or re-Facebook whatever messages you put out. This is a civil society hashtag driven by feminists following the Generation Equality Forum. So you're probably familiar with the hashtag Generation Equality, but this one specifically comes from civil society and is specifically looking at the messages we've been sharing today about structural barriers, overcoming structural barriers, and creating this solidarity movement among civil society with a very, very fierce analysis. So please do use this hashtag. It's a little bit long, but yeah. And then I would also like to say that these sessions, first of all, thank you so much to UN Women and the Regional Office of Europe and Central Asia. It's been really, really a good process that's been helped to work together. And this would not be possible without the kind support from these donors that we have. So the the Confederation of Swiss, and then the GITS and Women 2030 and Europe Aid. But yes, please, let's take a photo before you leave. And thank you so much to the moderators. You have been fantastic today. I loved watching all of your notes being taken in real time. And let's see, I'm gonna turn off my share now. Sorry, please bear with me.